advance when someone would say, I'd like to move this onto the end.
I was looking last night.
More comfortable. Okay.
Too.
I think
There it is. Okay. That's what it is.
Yeah, anybody can move something.
That makes sense.
Yeah, this book's getting some.
She's got some concerns about the grid too.
I don't know if they're gonna represent or.
You've been in it.
I've been in it now. Good.
Should be holding a trophy when that happens.
Ew.
Oh,
That's something important.
Hi, how's it going?
good. I moved in here, so
Um,
give you much.
Kind of a candid picture of Jack Nicholson, you know, at home in front of his bookshelf.
Yeah.
And the top corner up against like the cobwebs are his Emmys and Oscars. Like all the family pictures and books and artifacts from the, you know.
Awesome.
Yeah, and he's got like a little stack of row up
Right
there.
priorities right
Yeah.
there.
I need to-
Excuse me.
Oh.
Well, I do that too.
We all need that, right? She's just. And that, you know.
Justin?
How are you?
Morning.
Hey, Jim, what were you doing out in Sonoma?
Oh, hang on.
You got a time share.
mission directors. I'm so excited. No, that's crazy to me. Yeah, she's 20. What is happening?
Good for her. though.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
She's not doing good.
Hey, no,
Ready. All right, so let me call to order the February 25th, 2025 Board of Commission meeting. I've asked Commissioner Barry to open us with an invocation.
Thank you. Lord, be with us. Let us pray. Father, we come to you with thanks for this beautiful morning. We give thanks for the seasons we enjoy here in Michigan, and we give thanks for our beautiful home here in Ottawa County. As we gather together to be stewards of county business, be with us. Give us patience, understanding, and a desire to do what's best for all here in our county. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
man.
Can we stand for pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barry,
Present.
Mr. Joritsma,
Here.
Mr. Zylstra.
Here.
Mr. Bonema,
Here.
Mr. Moss,
Here.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Here.
Mr. Teeples.
Here.
Mrs. Rhodey, Mr. Kyers,
Here.
Mr. Bruger,
Here.
and Mrs. Medema.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Do we have correspondence?
None from us.
Okay, we needed a motion to approve the agenda.
We do have individuals
Oh,
sign up.
excuse
for
me,
public
I'm sorry,
comment,
I'm
don't we?
skipped right over it. Yes, can't do that. So now's the time for public comment. Understand that, Mr. McCarty, you're first on the line, right? Welcome. Would you come on forward? All I'd ask is that you, again, state your name for the record and where you live, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Joseph Parnell McCarter, Georgetown Township, volunteer and leader of the Save the Campbell effort. I thank and applaud the board for its excellent Campbell resolution, especially its citation of Michigan Constitution, which gives this elected board the right of intervening when a privately owned utility is endangering its citizens, such as consumers executives are in their service plan and rates under the regulation of the unelected MPSC. Consumers Energy is violating Michigan law with its plan because Michigan law implies that no electric public utility should move forward with a plan which endangers the grid like NERC and MISO are warning. I now quote the chair of MPSC in a recent Planet Detroit article about the Palisades nuclear plant. I think it's absolutely an essential part of our energy mix. Without it, he added, it certainly makes a steep hill steeper. Palisades restart would come within a few months of one of Michigan's last coal plants' planned retirement of 3 units, making the need for energy more urgent, Scripps said. The future of funding for such projects is unclear under the Trump administration. We're still asking the NRC to do something that they've never done before, Scripps said, unquote. So the chair of MPSC is acknowledging that the viability of Consumers' planned closure of Campbell significantly rests upon a precarious restart of the Palisades. There are huge technical, economic, and environmental risks associated with the Palisades restart. Adding to its precariousness is the fact that in recent weeks, the Trump administration has frozen funding for the Palisades. The Trump administration has also frozen payments for Michigan solar and wind projects, which place all Campbell alternatives in even deeper jeopardy. Consumers' 2025 Campbell closure is also in violation of the Trump administration's National Energy Emergency Executive Order, which calls for stopping such closures. It calls for co-locating AI data centers next to plants like the Campbell. If this executive order is followed, it is a way to significantly reduce electric rates for county citizens. The high charges to the data center can subsidize lower rates for county ratepayers. Remember, Consumers' customers pay 58% higher than Zeeland customers on municipalized electric. MLive reports that Consumers said it had inquiries from more than 30 prospective data center developers, representing a total of over 15 gigawatts in demand, and the Campbell is only 1.4 gigawatts. Consumers' energy plan is simply unrealistic. So as a first necessary step in addressing this situation, I urge the board to pass your excellent Campbell resolution.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCarter. Next,
Next public comment is Cindy Mushrow, Spring Lake Township.
welcome.
Cindy Mushrow, Spring Lake Township. I would like to start by saying it was great to have the agenda out in a timely manner, and how as a taxpayer, I was pleased that we are hopeful that we will soon have a lawyer whose expertise is in municipal law instead of one who was hired to push a political agenda. I was also pleased that the Crockery Lake contract will be revisited. That contract is not a fair or equitable use of taxpayer money. However, I had planned to speak today before I knew either of those items would be on the agenda. It has been disheartening to me to hear the acronym DEI referred to as if it was evil. To hear commissioners and other politicians discuss whether a grant should be turned down or a company not considered because they support DEI. So I'm asking commissioners to have the integrity to tell the citizens of Ottawa County which specific aspect of DEI you oppose. Are you opposed to diversity, equity, or inclusion? Because DEI is not a racist policy. And anyone who says it is at best ignorant. It is not mandated or quota hiring of a specific race or gender, or choosing a specific individual over another individual due to race or gender, because using that way is simply illegal. It's against the law to do what some people claim it is being used for. What DEI is removing obstacles to be open to diversity, to making sure things are done equitably, which means fairly, and to be inclusive or welcoming to a variety of people. If anyone on this board is opposed to those things, please have the integrity to admit it. Don't hide behind the lie that DEI is racist or that it promotes inferior people being hired, because that is simply not true. We have all seen the principles of DEI in action for the greater good of society since the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It certainly wasn't equitable to make female police officers wear skirts and heels and use smaller, less effective weapons. When these barriers were lifted, the police force became more inclusive. Changing tables in men's restrooms and family restrooms at airports and other facilities have made it more inclusive and equitable for fathers caring for their infants and daughters. Designated breast pumping areas have allowed a more equitable and inclusive environment for nursing mothers to return to work. These are examples of DEI in action. There are members of this board who argue that Ottawa County should not accept grants or do business with companies that are open to diversity, or they strive for equity, or they promote inclusion. No one should be opposed to those ideals. Ottawa County used to be known as the county where you belong. Please let the spirit of that motto return.
Thank you, Ms. Mushrow.
Next public comment is Stephen Rockman, Grand Haven Township.
Stephen Rockman, Grand Haven Township. Good morning, comrades. Only 2 years ago, Ottawa Impact ended the Ottawa County Department of Endless Identities. To the shock and awe of the Democrat crossovers, Trump is destroying the DEI industrial complex. But today's board collective bravely and courageously returned to favor of those Democrat crossover votes by returning DEI through the back door with the password Lakeshore Nonprofit Alliance. Shockingly, the Ottawa County Republican Party gave you a public spanking. Ouch, not in public. But I'm not here to criticize the DEI, but to finally remember its great leap forward to awaken the people to strive for ultimate social justice victory over the patriarchy. The enemies of the Cultural Revolution, the four olds of Ottawa County, old ideas, old cultures, old customs, and old habits were thoroughly exposed. Through the Cultural Intelligence Central Committee, the DEI worked tirelessly to promote communications with external revolutionaries and internal apparatchiks to the health department to grasp the revolutionary spirit of diversity and purge the impure, implicit bias elements of Ottawa County society and bring in a dude dressed like a lady to lecture the kulaks about mental health. Gloriously, the old Rhino board, with Kyer's vote, consummated its marriage to the DEI to create a culturally diverse environment of where you belong with the identities to smash the patriarchy and forge ahead courageously with a new culture built on the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I look forward to this new Rhino board again, increasing social justice awareness by putting the DEI Little Red Book into the hands of the people by achieving equity out of the ashes of the four olds where every hint of merit will be swept away. By proclaiming the cultural revolution to all and by vigorously supporting the crossover Red Guards to settle social justice scores with Ottawa Impact, by forcing them to endure public humiliation at these public struggle sessions. Be glorious and awaken the people. And read the room. DEI is dead. So is the grift. It's time to have a sit down. The Lakeshore Nonprofit Alliance.
Thank you,
Public
Mr. Rockman.
comment?
Mr. Rockman.
Next public comment, Michael Johnson, Spring Lake Township.
Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Mike Johnson. I'm from Spring Lake Township. I just have two short comments. Number one, I did want to comment about Mr. Bulci, one of the people you're considering for your attorney, and having observed him over the last couple of years at Spring Lake Township meetings, I just want to say, as a former business and corporate type person that worked with general counsels and assistant general counsels and outside external lawyers, Ron's a solid person. He knows what he's doing. I observed him doing it even in the most difficult of times, which would have been the blueberry farm situation in Spring Lake Township. He can stay steady during those particular periods, which I know will occur for you guys. So I think he's an excellent candidate. I hope you go forward with him. My second is really about the Crockery Lake, and not for or against. I made a comment in December when the decision was before the board, and I strongly urged you guys to take a pause, because as an executive, when you make a new determination about something, you're setting a precedent, and that means others are going to come your way. There are a lot of other inland lakes that have similar issues, or do, or will, and they'll all be coming up to the bar to ask for the dollars. So only looking for you as you make your determination, What do you want to do going forward? Do you want to be in the business of offering grants or money to other inland lakes? Then you have to plan and budget for it. If you don't, then I urge you, whatever your decision is with regard to Crockery Lake, to make it publicly known what you want to do. Okay? Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Next public comment is Barbara Lee Van Horsen, Grand Haven City.
Welcome.
Thank you. Barbara Lee Van Horsen, the City of Grand Haven and Momentum Center. Two things. First, I want to share the good news that we have completed a research project that we did in partnership with Michigan State University, funded by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan Foundation on Sierra, which is an intervention for emotional regulation. It went incredibly well. Our members reported not only learning new coping skills, but being able to actively use them in their day-to-day living. We're looking at modifying that program so we can offer it to the general public. So we'll be working with MSU to make those modifications. So I just wanted to share that good news. And then I want to invite you to our next town hall. I told you last month that we had started a series of town halls on mental health and the various things that impact that. In March, our topic is mental health and religion. We have a fabulous panel of clergy and therapists to talk about both how religion can be very, very helpful for our mental well-being and the ways in which it can be damaging. So we had over 80 people show up for our last town hall. We're asking people to register just so that we make sure that we can accommodate everybody. If it gets too big, we'll look at a bigger venue. I did bring some flyers, and I invite you all to come to the town hall and be part of this important community conversation, because as I like to say, if we work together, we will keep gaining momentum. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Public comment number 6 is Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township.
Welcome.
Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township. At the December 19, 2024 Board of Commissioners meeting, Commissioner Bonema called for an investigation concerning the lead up to Wetmore and Epperson severance, calling into question HR documentation, HR attorney involvement, the manner of voting in closed session in the way Ottawa Impact members exercised influence to vote a certain way, or they would vote for an inflated amount because they had the votes to do so. Sunday evening, February 2, I sent an email to Commissioner Bonema. Greetings. You were calling for an investigation of the lead up to Wetmore Epperson severance vote, the representations made by Joe Moss, representations by HR attorney, the manner of voting in closed session, and the way Ottawa Impact members exercised influence to vote a certain way, or they would vote for an inflated amount because they had the votes to do so. Can you provide update on what investigation activities have taken place and the findings of said activities? Please advise. Within an hour, he responded, "Hi, Dan. This investigation is being discussed this Friday with the administrator and director of finance. It is important that we also have access to competent counsel for this issue. Thanks for checking in. Best, Jacob Bonema, Commissioner." Wednesday, February 5. I responded back to him, "Thank you. However, from your response, it does not indicate if discussion is the beginning of or conclusion of an internal investigation. Joe Moss characterized you as grandstanding during the December 19, 2024 BOC meeting. I took you as genuinely wanting to drill down to the facts. Regards, Dan Zimmer." I will ask again, what investigative activities have taken place and what were the findings? Concerned citizens want to know.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmer.
Number 7 is Harvey Nickel, Georgetown Township.
My name is Harvey Nickel from Georgetown Township. After seeing what has happened in the past few weeks, I believe that we need a Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, here in Ottawa County. I'm amazed and appalled by the fraud and waste of our taxpayer dollars that is being exposed by the DOGE team. The U.S. Treasury can't track $4.7 trillion in payments. Medicare sent $2.7 trillion to people who weren't eligible. The Pentagon lost track of $2.5 trillion. Social Security sends $100 billion a year to people with no identity. USAID sent $20 million for a Sesame Street show in Iraq, $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, and $15 million for contraceptives and condoms in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. The Department of Education spends $50 million a year pushing the LGBTQ+ ideology on our kids, and USAID spends $50 billion a year pushing leftist woke ideology throughout the world. This really hits close to home. In Jenison High School, the AP Psychology class is using material sponsored by USAID to push the woke gender identity. Here's an image of one of the slides used in the class of the gender person, showing the multiple genders that a person can have. Note USAID logo on the lower left corner of the image. I am quite surprised by the people who are actually upset at DOGE for exposing this waste of our taxpayer dollars and not upset with the fact of the waste and the fraud. I suggest that we invite DOGE to Ottawa County or make sure that our taxpayer dollars are not being wasted. What other NGOs, in addition to the Momentum Center, have received funds from USAID, and what have they done with those monies? What organizations have received funds from Ottawa County, and what have they done with those monies? In fact, what happened to the $57 million in ARPA funds that were hastily spent in 2022 just so that the Ottawa Impact Commissioners would have no say in its distribution? I remember that $5 million was used to give bonuses to county employees, but there was not a single penny given to the citizens who lost their jobs, businesses, and homes as a result of the COVID shutdown. As a citizen of Ottawa County, we would like to see the reports of how these funds were spent and how the projects benefit our county.
Thank you, Mr. Nickel.
Number 9 is Virginia Greenlee, number 8, Virginia Greenlee Park Township.
As you know, President Trump is actually Ottawa impacting the nation. I also agree with this previous gentleman that we need a DOGE department here in Ottawa County. Ottawa Impact Commissioners actually began part of that, not by that name, but they started to scrutinize grants and monies that were being spent by the previous board. They only had office for 2 years. You guys get to have office for 4 years. I'd like to see what you're really going to do. We need to be speaking up against the wastefulness. There is a lot of wastefulness with DEI, regardless of people thinking that it was a good idea. You know what? I grew up as Hispanic, the same as Lucy Ebel. I was never prejudiced against. I was never unwelcome. I was never on the marginalized side. And yet we make a big deal out of it because the Marxist lens seeped into education after Reagan had won. Reagan won, but all this leftist ideology with social justice, DEI, and all that stuff came into being. When I graduated, I was part of helping with the 99-142 Act to help the handicapped. But look at how far we've come from handicap to LGBT+, providing favors for that. I agree, we need to do something about the funds that are going to the Momentum Center, the Community Spokes / Lakeshore Nonprofit Alliance. Those funds we need to hold accountable. And a lot of that shouldn't be approved with our tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Greenlee.
Number 9 is Bruce Greenlee, Park Township.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of the Commissioners as a citizen of Ottawa County. The Momentum Center in Grand Haven has received between $260,000 and $290,000 a year from mental health millage that began in 2016. It has been extended and extended and extended. Not-for-profit and non-governmental organizations or NGOs are not audited. And we're learning in the news that with OSAID, this sector does not have to disclose their campaign contributions. Why the exemption? Do any of us as individuals or businesses, but not-for-profit, government organizations, they have the opportunity to be exempt, and as individuals and businesses, we do not. Why are so many of our elected officials supportive of this continuing more than $20,000 per month support of the Momentum Center in Grand Haven? They have no licensed professionals on staff, no MDs, nurses, social workers, or therapists. You can be a member for $1, and that will put you on the rolls and be counted in statistics. Thank you for your, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Greenlee.
Those are all the registered public comments we have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else out there that'd like to make a comment? Welcome.
Sheila Detloff, Holland Township. I want to talk about trust. In the January board meeting, there was a discussion about DEI with regard to the Spoke contract. Commissioner Wenzel quoted from the LNA website where it talks about their commitment to operating DEI internally, as well as helping to advance the adoption of DEI in the local nonprofit sector. Chairman Teeples responded saying, we also had that same language in the recruiting firm that was hired last summer, and Joe interrupted him to say, quote, no, that's not accurate, actually. And then he repeated, that's just not accurate, though. In fact, it is accurate, which Joe would know if he had listened to my public comments on October 8th, 2024. Here's what I said then. The W Talent Solutions website features information about DEI on no fewer than 12 of its pages. In an article authored by Ashley Ward, she touts a tool they use that supports DEI initiatives. In another article, she writes, creating genuinely inclusive workplaces requires more than just checking boxes or paying lip service to diversity and inclusion. It requires a concerted effort to challenge biases, address systemic barriers, and foster a culture where all individuals feel valued and respected. By prioritizing diversity and inclusion, organizations can unlock the full potential of their workforce and create environments where everyone can thrive. And then in her presentation to the Executive Transition Committee on October 1st, she mentioned their DEI compliance efforts and included a slide that showed that increasing diverse candidate pools was one of their core focuses. Now, I'm not repeating my public comments to point out Joe and Sylvia's hypocrisy, to be perfectly okay with DEI when it suits their purposes, although that hypocrisy will no doubt be on display again today when they inevitably clutch their pearls over the Baker-Tilly contract again. No, what I want to emphasize is that Joe sat here at this dais and lied to all of you. And it wasn't even a sneaky lie. It was a blatant, easily disproven lie. That does not seem like a good way to earn trust. I would hope that you don't need to include honesty in your board rules, but perhaps you might want to consider it.
Thank you, Ms. Detloff. Anyone else like to address the board? Thank you. Welcome.
Jerry McHale, I live in West Olive. And as I look at what happened in Ottawa County since the last election, I'm assured of one thing. In the name of righting the ship, there's an awful lot of back scratching going on here. The previous board hired a search firm to find a new administrator. That money is somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 was flushed down the toilet by the new board as the remaining candidate was intimidated to quit before he was even hired. Chair Teeples told us that he called his friend, former Sheriff Rosema, to fill the spot. And Mr. Bruger assured us that he didn't want much money, he just wanted help. And now $14,000 a month later, Mr. Ozema hires his friend Ron Francis as an assistant. There's no discussion, no other candidates. Now I see the name Ron Bolche come up as an expert in government law. He represents numerous townships, the city of Grand Haven, plus the Grand Haven BLP. I ask, if conflicts arise between these entities and the county, who gets the best deal? Between the city and the BLP, it was never the BLP. Locally, just like on the national stage, lawfare and media bias took its toll and people voted in this new majority. And we will continually hear about the legal fees on the previous. Why? Because every time the majority made a move, there was someone else to sue, and the same willing attorney took the case. She made bank off of Ottawa County. The previous board was sued because they were accused of violating the Open Meetings Act before they were even sworn in. This went all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court, and every court along the way said, if you're not sworn in, you're not violating the Open Meetings Act. So from this Open Meetings Act, that they don't apply. And as we see, the new board did the same thing. So assured were Chair Teeples and Vice Chair Bruger of their board positions that they had acceptance speeches ready and presents to hand out. And where were the hair on fire articles from the Sentinel and from MLive and the Washington Post? Not to be seen, because everybody knows it was a put-up job, because there was nothing wrong about this, about talking to each other before you're sworn in. One of the items that Mr. Teeple's long impromptu acceptance speech warned against was block voting. Yet block voting is all I see on this new board. If you really are interested in righting the ship, all you commissioners, I hope that some of you will start voting on merit and facts, and not just on your political alliances. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Is there anyone online?
Second.
That's the second
Second
round.
public.
We don't do online right now.
Only doing the second time? Okay. All right, I guess that ends public comment period. Can move on to the agenda now. I needed a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Okay. Comments? No comments? Okay. Let's just make a verbal one on this one then. All in favor of approving the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, now I need a motion for the consent resolutions.
So move.
Support.
Comments, please.
Remove item J, please.
Contract with Baker Tilly.
Yes, please.
Okay, let's move that to 8T. Any other, Allison?
I'd like to pull item N, please.
Okay, the budget adjustment. Let's move that to 8V.
It's 8U.
Any other,
Oh, you.
anything else?
Letter U.
EU, yeah. We're gonna move that to 8U. All right. All right, now let's vote on the consent resolutions with those two removed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah, roll call vote on
Got the
that,
roll
Mr.
call.
Should we
Chair.
do a roll call on that one?
There's money in it.
Oh, that's true. Dustin, can you do that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers.
Yes.
Mr. Berry,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Miedema,
Yes.
Mr. Jortsma,
Yes.
Mr. Bruger,
Yes.
and Mr. Teeples.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now we're to the action items. The first action item is to appoint Gary Rosema to the Grand Valley Metropolitan Council for Ottawa County for the 2025.
So moved.
Support.
Any questions? No? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, the next one is the Campbell plant. Suggested resolution to approve the resolution in support of the delayed closing of the Consumers Energy Plant. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Support.
Okay, comments?
I do have a question. With respect to the MPSC and our county intervention, our ability to intervene, are there any definitive steps have we looked into taking to actually intervene substantively in that, or is this resolution enough? I don't know if anyone has an answer for that.
I think at this time, if there's support for this resolution, we'll find out what their response is and then discuss further from there as a board what steps we might be interested in taking.
Excellent. Yeah. That's it.
Elson?
Can I just ask, maybe you're already going to do this for you to read the resolution? Or somebody?
You want to read it?
I'm happy to do it, but
Sure.
just so it's put into record. Whereas Consumers Energy, hereafter Consumers, operates the J.H. Campbell plant, hereafter Campbell plant, located in Port Sheldon Township, Ottawa County, Michigan. And whereas the Campbell plant delivers electricity to Ottawa County, the state of Michigan, and throughout central portions of the United States, is an integrated member of the electrical grid called the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator Incorporated, hereafter MISO. And whereas the Michigan Public Service Commission, hereafter MPSC, has statutory authority to regulate the Campbell plant, MCL 460.6. And whereas in 2022, consumers received approval from the MPSC to cease producing electricity at the Campbell plant beginning April 1, 2025. And whereas the MPSC decision was based on projected increases in energy production from diverse sources that would offset lost production from the closure of the Campbell plant. And whereas the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, hereafter NERC, indicated in its December 2024 report that out of 11 North American grid networks extending from the Canadian Arctic to the Gulf, the only network receiving a high-risk warning for shortfalls in electricity supplies is the MISO grid, NERC 2024 Long-Term Reliability Assessment, December 2024. And whereas the NERC report further indicates that the reason for the high-risk warning is that resource additions are not keeping up with generator retirements and demand growth. And whereas consumers' representatives reported to members of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners at the February 11, 2025 Ottawa County Planning and Policy Committee meeting that closure of the Campbell plant was not originally slated to take place until after the year 2030. And whereas the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners has the authority to enter or to intervene in any action or certificate proceeding involving the services, charges, or rates of any privately owned public utility furnishing services or commodities to ratepayers within the county. Article 7, Section 15 of the Constitution of the State of Michigan, 1964, as amended. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners requests that the MPSC consider this resolution as a formal appeal of its decision dated June 22, 2022, authorizing the Campbell plant to close on May 31, 2025, and be it further resolved that in light of the concerns described herein, the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners requests that the MPSC postpone this closure until such time as a new hearing can be held before the MPSC to address these concerns and to provide assurances to the citizens of Ottawa County, the state of Michigan, and all members of the MISO grid that based on currently available energy sources, the closure of the Campbell plant will not have an adverse effect on the reliable delivery of electricity to our respective communities.
Yeah, I think, if I may.
Let's go with Joe first.
Thank you, Commissioner Miedema, for reading that. I'd say the resolution does a good job, speaks for itself. There is no good reason to rush the closing. There are certainly some bad reasons to rush the closing. I do believe this has a negative impact if they continue forward with closing early. We know there are some admitted urgent needs in energy production in Michigan. We know there are risks. They've been talked about quite a bit here. One public commenter said, consumers' plan is unrealistic. Well, agree with that. I'd go a little further and say it's ideological. And they're pushing, whether it's public or not, a climate crisis, green energy agenda in their war on affordable fossil fuels. It's fairly obvious what's going on. They're completely out of line with the Trump administration and the direction that the country is going. So I definitely support the resolution and absolutely believe that this closure should be delayed at a minimum.
Jacob?
Yeah, thank you. No, I agree with those comments. Based on the information that I've seen and as we worked on the language for this resolution, I think it's a prudent step to take a step back. The decision to allow this closure to happen was made years ago. And there's been a lot of new information that's developed in the last 3 years. We need to make sure that all of those steps have been completed and that it truly is in the best interest for our constituents. That's who we are here to advocate for, is the best interest of you, our constituents, and that our grid is stable. Power is essential to business being able to grow and thrive here. And of course, our community members need that every day in every way, shape, or form. So demand is going up, not down. So the idea of removing power from the grid just doesn't make sense before we are truly assured that a one-for-one replacement of the power that's being turned off is in place. So that's why I really resonated with this resolution and wanted to work on it. It's because our grid operators have true concerns about this. It's really important that we listen to them. They come from an area of fact and true concern over grid stability. So that's what we're advocating for here, and I hope that we can support this resolution today.
Yeah, John, I appreciate a lot of what you all have said. I just want to make a motion to amend the fifth whereas. That says, whereas the MPSC decision was based on projected increase in energy production, just like to insert the two words in part behind based. As I read this settlement, the decision was not based wholly on projected increases in energy production.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second that. Want to share a little more, Doug, so I can understand what I just seconded?
I'll pick up where I left off then, for sure. As I read the settlement, there's 6 parts to it. First is obviously the closure. The second is the purchase of the covert generating station, which has happened, and providing for the availability of the DE Carn units 3 and 4. Those are already in place. So two of the 5 big asset pieces are already in place. So to say that it's based entirely on projected increases, I don't think is entirely fair.
Mr. Chair.
Joe?
It doesn't say it was based entirely on projected
I'm
increases.
clarifying because
It
without
just
an
says that it
adjective
was
there-
based on,
Right.
just based on.
Without a qualifier, to me, it reads entirely. So if you're agreeing with me that it's not entirely, then putting in part does clarify that.
Anybody else have any comments on Doug's motion? Okay, let's take a vote on Doug's motion. All in favor of adding the words "in part" in the whereas clause after the word "based" and before the words "on projected increases"? Say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Okay.
Nay.
Let's take a roll call on that one, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. Mr. Bonema,
No.
Mr. Joritsma,
No.
Mr. Bruger,
No.
Mrs. Miedema,
No.
Mrs. Wenzel,
No.
Mr. Barry,
No.
Mr. Moss,
No.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers, and Mr. Teeples.
No.
Motion fails.
All right, any other comments on the resolution as read? Allison?
Not necessarily on the resolution, or we're past that part, right? So we can just talk about the motion, the main motion? Okay.
Yes,
Um,
that's what, yes, that's
Yep,
where we're at.
I just wanted to just thank again the board for the time spent working together on this matter. at our committee level meeting. I'm thankful that Rich Hauptman was here to be able to be asked the questions. I'm thankful for his time coming here and asking questions. I think we're still waiting on a couple of the answers for a couple of the questions that were put out there. I'm also thankful for our senators that got involved and our state reps that chose to make their voice known, and for the community at large of just speaking up. I also want to thank Joseph Parnell McCarter. While I don't agree with everything that he's put in his Save the Campbell plant, he is the one that has done a lot of work behind the scenes for many months, going to townships and local municipalities, and really has brought a lot of attention to the subject matter. And I do appreciate the work that he has done. So.
Josh?
Sure, I'll go. I'm going to be voting in favor of this resolution. However, my reasons for voting it are much different than those that have been stated so far. So I'm going to, well, in part, they've been different. So I want to clarify those. I think number one that's most important is I do believe in climate change. I do believe that we have an impact on our environment by the actions that we make as human beings. I brought a picture of the National Geographic front page from my childhood. This was the spill of the Exxon Valdez oil spill in Alaska. And I remember as a child seeing this and thinking, wow, we got to do better as human beings. I'm not sure if I thought exactly that, but I thought that's bad. I bring this is not coal, obviously, but this is an evidence that we do have an impact on our environment. And I do believe that coal has a negative impact on our environment. And I am thrilled with the closure of coal plants. I do believe we need a diverse source of energy, excluding coal. I've had the opportunity to vote to close one coal plant as a city councilman in the city of Grand Haven. And it's a unique position to have been in. The second part of that decision was whether to bring in a new energy source into the city of Grand Haven. And I voted no on that process, in part because I was assured that a power plant in the city of Grand Haven would not guarantee that the city of Grand Haven had power if the grid went down. The grid is so interconnected and we are reliant on a diverse power sources. In our case, the MISO grid, which I brought a visual on that one, it's in red, goes all the way from Canada down to the Gulf. And anything that happens on that grid impacts what happens in Ottawa County. And when reading the NERC study, which is the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, that was published in just December, 3 months ago. That group is a group of individuals who are not politically motivated. In fact, the CEO, who want green energy, by the way, the CEO actually sits as the chair of the Cleaner Energy Systems for the United Nations Economic Commission in Europe. These people are not coal people, but they're warning us that there's a concern with the MISO grid. And that concern is that renewables are not coming online, renewables and other sources are not coming online fast enough to offset the shuttering of other plants, in this case, the Campbell plant. So energy has to be, we have to have electricity. We have to have it in my city of Grand Haven. We have to have it throughout Ottawa County and throughout the MISO grid. And my concern is that shutting down the Campbell plant right now before more green resources that I much prefer are brought online is that we'll have rolling blackouts or brownouts, however they're called, which is exactly why NERC was formed in 1967, if I look at the date there. So I'll be voting in favor of this. I do not like coal. I just want that stated, but I do not want our citizens to be without energy sources, electricity, when they turn the lights on. Second part, and then I'll wrap it up. Referring this back to the MPSC, I believe is the right thing to do. This is not our call in Ottawa County. This is way above our pay grade. It just happens that the Campbell plant is in Ottawa County, so this has landed on our desks. And it's the right thing for us as commissioners here, I believe, to forward this on to the professionals who make these calls. Those professionals made the call 2 years ago that it would be okay to shut the Campbell plant. That decision was made 2 years ago. And I liken it to when you go to the doctor and you get an x-ray and you're monitoring a cancerous cell or something of that nature, and you go back to get a second opinion, and you look at that second x-ray and you say, oh, wow, it shrunk. The treatment is working. Or, you know what? It hasn't shrunk. The treatment's not working. We need to continue. So this I look at as a 2-year review of the MPSC's decision. If they decide, after looking at this, after 2 years' time, that there are adequate resources, I'll let it rest. But at this time, given the NERC report, I believe it is incumbent upon us to send it to them to take a second look. So thank you.
Alice?
From my experience in the last couple years, there has usually been a further resolved of who we choose to send the resolution onto. And I'm wondering, I don't see that here. And I'm wondering if we would like to add maybe another paragraph that just says who we're hoping to communicate this resolution to with our voice.
Are you making that into a motion? You think we
I'm
need-
asking for discussion at the moment.
we've got to figure out how this has got to get presented, no question about it, but I think we can work that out. I think, especially if it passes, that means we want it to happen. We just got to make it happen. Between you and Jacob and Josh and the work you guys have been doing on this, I think it's fantastic. So you guys will get it to the right hands. So I don't think we need to make an adjustment to the motion.
I think that's what we pay our lobbyists for. He'll know, our legislators and know which ones to bring it to and where to direct it, in my opinion.
And I'd say at the very least, we're sending it directly to the MPSC, who we're petitioning for this decision. So maybe we agree that we're going to send that by certified mail, so they sign it and we know they've gotten it.
Yeah, I just wanted to have the discussion as a board so that we're in the full understanding of who this is getting sent to, and so our community knows who we're passing it on to. I think that's typically why it's been included, so that the community's not wondering, and so that we're not left wondering, and so that the ball doesn't get dropped. That's really what it amounts to, that just so that there's checks and balances.
I think we can report back on that. Absolutely. I think the public is interested. I did want to make a quick comment to hat tip to the 7 townships that have also passed similar resolutions of concern about this. We need to acknowledge our constituents base here in Ottawa County that they've taken action as well. So we appreciate them also being aware of this, creating awareness throughout their districts and communities. So again, this is just a prudent step to say, hey, May is coming. You know, we're in the final term of this action. So let's take one more look at this. That's what we're requesting before you shut the lights off of the Campbell plant.
Because some of our local units have been asking what the county board is going to do. Would it be appropriate to send it to all the local jurisdictions in the county?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any other comments?
Allison made the comment about some of the questions. Rich did respond. I will get them forward to you.
Okay.
You all have them.
They all have them now?
They all have them.
Okay.
Are they in the packet that you
No,
sent?
in the email I sent yesterday to everybody was all of the last responses from consumers and
Okay.
from Rich. You all have them.
Okay,
So
thanks, Jen.
it's there. I'd like to say too that I'd like to commend all of you, especially Josh and Jacob and Allison for leading this and putting this resolution together. I think it's great work. But I'd also like to commend Consumers Energy. They've been up front with all of this. They haven't shirked their communications to us and trying to give answers to us as they can. So they've been, in my mind, they've been good citizens to our community and in the state of Michigan for 60 plus years, right? And so, yeah, they're getting ready to make a plant closing, and yes, it's prudent for us to make sure that we're doing what we can to make sure it's a safe decision. And that's why we are a community. And I think everybody should be respected for that. So thank you. All right, anybody else? Can you do a roll call for the resolution, Justin?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bruegger,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra.
No.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Miedema,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Joritsma,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers.
Yes.
Mr. Berry,
Yes.
and Mr. Teeples.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the Crockery Lake Agreement. There's a suggested motion to authorize legal action for court ruling on the validity of the agreement for the care, management, and maintenance of land located at Crockery Lake, also known as the Crockery Lake Agreement, approved and dated on or about December 10 through 17, 2024. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Support.
Okay, let me tee this one off as we get into the comments. I do have comments on this one. We have a legal issue, a legal concern. Attached to the board packet is the legal opinion from the county's litigation attorneys, Plunkett Cooney, the same attorneys who represented the county in the John Gibbs lawsuit and who currently represents Jill Moss through the county in the employment interference matter of Chris Kleingens and with regard to other court actions. His legal opinion states very clearly that the agreement, the Crockery Lake Agreement, is invalid as a matter of law and not enforceable. So by this motion, this board will authorize a legal action asking the court to rule on the validity of the agreement. Frankly, given our duty not to do anything unlawful and our responsibilities as elected representatives to the entire county, and in keeping with the premise of a limited role of government, I do not know how any commissioner could vote against the motion. But before we discuss the motion, let me offer more insights into the matter. First, let me say that the residents of Crockery Lake are not responsible for this legal quagmire. They honestly and simply wanted help with their lake restoration. The Crockery Lake residents are victims. They rightfully trusted that more informed people, including county attorneys, would do what is best and proper and legal for all affected parties. They did not seek unfair considerations. The prior board, likewise, was simply trying to help. Regardless of the needs, however, and of one's desire to help, sometimes there are legitimate and legal limitations, especially as elected officials handling taxpayer dollars, which prevent the desired actions of help. And then, even if good intended and lawful assistance are available, the means by which such help is offered must be carefully crafted and conveyed not to cause further harm or unintended consequences. On December 3, 2024, the Finance and Administration Committee held a public meeting to discuss the then proposed Crockery Lake Agreement. During that meeting, Commissioner Rebecca Curran, rightfully and with foresight, voiced concerns whether the contract could expose the county to more litigation. The attorney for the county's Water Resource Commissioner, who has decades of legal experience in such matters, also raised several concerns about the contract, including why the county was being obligated to indemnify Chester Township when the township and not Ottawa County was supposed to do the lake restoration work. She also wondered why the contract failed to set forth any cleanup standards to confirm project performance. Indeed, despite having performance obligations under the contract, Chester Township has refused any indemnification protection to Ottawa County. The committee nevertheless voted to approve the contract to the Board of Commissioners. On December 10, the Board of Commissioners held its public meeting where the contract was further discussed. The county attorney, Jack Jordan from the Common Law Group, was present again and said that the township, Chester Township, quote, will be leading the project. Commissioner Kleingens wondered what the cleanup standards were going to be because, as mentioned, none were provided for in the contract. And he asked whether the lake restoration work would ever actually be completed, given that the neighboring property owners, including adjacent farmers with fertilizer and pesticide runoffs, and homeowners with septic tanks, were not obligated to change their practices to prevent further lake degradation. Commissioner Zylstra raised similar concerns. The board was told that the agreement required the county to give the money, $563,000, 100% of the estimated cost of lake restoration, and that we had to, quote, trust, end quote, that Chester Township would get the work done, even though the contract provides that, quote, the township shall not and will not incur any contractual financial liability in carrying out the project beyond the county's payment, and that the township was not obligated to use any of its own funds to carry out the project. When asked about the legality of the county entering into such a contract, the Coleman Legal Group offered no opinion, except Attorney Jack Jordan made the simple verbal statement that the only statutory authority he could find on the subject was MCL 324.30911, which provides, quote, "The County Board of Commissioners may provide up to 25% of the cost of a lake improvement project on any public inland lake." This is the exact statutory provision which our Plunkett Cooney attorneys cites to be the county's maximum financial liability if the contract was legal, which he says it is not. Nevertheless, Interim Administrator Ben Wetmore said that the contract had been in negotiation for months, even though certain members were just then being informed, and also said that the county's risks were, quote, low. The Board of Commissioners passed the agreement as written, including for 100%, not just 25%, of the cost of the lake improvement project. When I saw the draft agreement before the December 10, 2024 board meeting, I thought it had to be a mistake. I thought there was no way the county and the township intended for the county to assume the risk of non-performance of the cleanup, hand over $563,000, pay the township a fee for handling the funds, pay the township's attorney fees, and also indemnify the township. It had to be a mistake. However, after now having read through email communications between the parties and their attorneys and representatives from December, I've come to the understanding that there is no mistake. This agreement was knowingly and intentionally negotiated as it is written and signed. I've been an environmental attorney for over 30 years, beginning with Dickinson Wright back in 1991. As an attorney for the city of Grand Rapids, I was in charge of the environmental site assessment of the land upon which the Vandal Arena now sits. I did the same thing for the DeVos Place along the riverfront. I completed a full environmental analysis of the Gerald R. Airport, Ford Airport, including an environmental cleanup out there. I was involved in the cleanup in Grand Haven along the riverfront just east of 31, which now sits in Marina. I've handled Superfund cases and PRP actions throughout the country. And I've coordinated numerous petroleum underground storage tank sites in West Michigan. I understand the nuances of environmental cleanup projects. Through my experience, I've come to know that there is no such thing as a routine environmental cleanup, that environmental projects seem to always exceed budgets and rarely, if ever, are completed within anticipated timeframes, and that the cleanup standards are often a changing and moving target depending on who is the governor of Michigan, further exacerbating the ultimate cost of cleanup. And I've never seen where a non-liable party, such as Ottawa County here, voluntarily agrees to assume an environmental cleanup it did not cause. This is fundamentally a bad idea for Ottawa County as a whole. Nevertheless, through this so-called negotiated agreement as written, Ottawa County has arguably intentionally agreed to accept an unprecedented liability and financial risk that might well exceed $563,000 and bind the county to long-term obligations. But what else does the contract provide? Let's look at the indemnification clause, which Commissioner Bonema raised concerns about during the public meetings in December. It provides that the county agrees to, quote, indemnify and hold harmless Chester Township from all claims, damages, costs, liabilities, costs, lawsuits, and expenses, including for court costs, attorney fees, which may incur as a result of any acts of omission or negligence which may arise out of this agreement. Let me ask, why would the township have insisted on being indemnified and held harmless for the county's acts or omissions if both parties had not understood that the county might possibly be assuming a greater risk of performance and liability? And that is exactly my point. Here, with this so-called negotiated agreement, we are arguably opening a Pandora's box of potential problems for Ottawa County. Additionally, the county is supposed to pay Chester Township an administrative fee for holding the monies we are giving for the benefit of their residents for free. This is like a donor of a gift being also required to give the recipient of a gift extra cash for having taken the gift. Or it is somewhat akin to a bank, a lender, after waiving all of its own transaction fees, then being required to pay the borrower a fee for accepting the bank loan. Except here, there is no loan. It is a free and very significant gift. Finally, under the contract, Ottawa County has agreed to pay the township's attorney fees for having negotiated this agreement. In any contract, there is supposed to be mutual consideration from both parties to the other party to form a legal contract. That is what forms contracts. Both parties giving something of value to the other party in exchange to bind an agreement. However, here that does not exist. I see no reciprocating benefit from Chester Township to Ottawa County. The value flows only one way, from Ottawa County to Chester Township. Yes, even though under the contract, Chester Township is responsible for the work, Chester Township has refused to provide Ottawa County with any indemnification and hold harmless protection. Instead, under the agreement, Ottawa County and only Ottawa County is being obligated to provide risk protection to Chester Township, even though many in the public thought we were only giving money away and not supposed to perform any work on the project. Does this make sense? Clearly, we must ask, was there anyone representing Ottawa County? And why was the public not fully informed about these facts? Why weren't these concerns of the agreement earnestly discussed at the public board meetings last December? When the questions of indemnification were raised, why were they so flippantly dismissed? Why are most of you, including certain commissioners, hearing about them today from me in such detail for the first time? Why? But we are here to address the legal opinion from our litigation attorney. And he opines that the Crockery Lake Agreement is unenforceable as a matter of law. Thus, before we make a serious mistake and act against the law, we all need to know the answer. And the court can give us that answer. We need the court to tell us. We can't make a mistake, which is avoidable. We can't have the county perform unlawfully, and we should not expose the county to potentially significant risk, liability, and greater expense with an invalid contract. Every taxpayer in Ottawa County has a stake in making sure our government is not overreaching or acting against legal authority. So I will be voting yes on this motion. It is reasonable and it is reasonable and the responsible thing to do. I can't imagine any commissioner voting otherwise. Anyone else?
Have we reached out to Chester Township and talked about these legal issues?
We have a negotiated agreement. So the agreement stands as it is. Chester Township expects us to abide by it.
I guess the question is, have they seen legal opinion?
They've-
Have any reactions to it?
We've given it. They've got it, right?
They did they have any response? I mean, I guess I'm concerned that before we go down the road of challenging the legality on these 2 points, that we talk to Chester Township today, would you be willing to address these 2 points, or at least, the 25%, which seems to be the most salient part, right?
No, that's not the question. It doesn't make any difference if it's $1. It doesn't make any difference if it's 25% or 100%. If the contract's invalid because the county can't enter into these kind of contracts, then it makes no difference what the dollar amount of the contract is. That's what we'll be asking the court to do. Tell us if we have the authority to enter into these kind of contracts. Our attorneys tell us we do not. And so it doesn't make any difference if we go back and negotiate a different transactional matter with Chester. That's not the issue. That's the difference.
Mike on or no?
Yeah. Mhm.
There's, in my mind, 2 parts to okay, Cooney. One is 25% issue, the other is, should it be the parks taking the lead on this, or should it be the board taking the lead? Is that what you're referring to, the second part?
It's the first part. It's the second part, yes, as you described it, yeah.
I mean, I guess, again, before we go to court on this, would you be willing to address those 2 issues, right? There you go.
There you go.
Not that I want to hear myself talk, but I didn't think. Right. I guess that's my concern, is that, if Plunkett Cooney and this board have concerns about the validity of the contract, let's go to Chester Township and see if they'll be willing to address that.
As I would see it, go ahead, Joe, want to address something?
Yeah, I guess I would echo part of that and say perhaps before we continue with further action, there could be some sort of conference between, our counsel with Plunkett and Chester's counsel or something like that for additional discussion. My understanding is that the agreement itself falls within the county's authority under Michigan law. And I know Mike's letter, tries to, say that the board exceeded its authority when entering an intergovernmental agreement. But that's not how I understand the law. That's not how I see it. MCL 124.2 on intergovernmental contracts and MCL 124.504 for joint public powers explicitly authorizes counties to enter into these types of agreements for jointly managing property. So it's my understanding the agreement falls well within the county's, general public service authority, and to address things like water quality and environmental consideration, land management, care for property, et cetera. But maybe there could be more discussion between the attorneys.
I think the fact that you and our county attorney disagree is exactly why we're asking the court to rule, because there is ambiguity. That's how I have no problem going and sitting down with Chester Township, having this conversation after we know whether or not the contract is legal. I don't think we can do anything until we know exactly what our real situation is. I mean, we can go to them right now and say, hey, are you willing to rescind or rewrite the contract? But if it's enforceable as is, that would be unnecessary to do. So I think that I would prefer we ask the court to rule right now. So I'm completely happy with this. I'll be voting yes.
Do we have a way to do that?
Yeah, insurance companies do this all the time. They call them declaratory actions, where you're giving a court a contract and asking the court to rule on the meaning or intent of the contract. So that would be the idea. There's also, obviously, the Zimmer lawsuit. We could potentially use the mechanism there to file a motion for summary disposition. There's a couple of mechanisms, but yeah, that's the strategy, would be to ask the court. And I mean, we don't want a litigation matter. We're not going to get into a fight with Chester. We just want the court to tell us. And if the court tells us we have a contract, however bad I may think it is for everybody, it is what it is. We signed it, right? That's why I think this is important, that we can't make a mistake here and we have the means, we have a court action that allows us to figure this out. Josh?
Yeah, I think this is I'm not an attorney, as we know, and nor am I an environmental specialist, as we know from earlier in our vote. So I'm very much in favor of deferring this to a judge to let us know. And they may disagree with the opinion that we've gotten. They may agree with it, but I just as soon ask the question before we proceed with negotiating over something that may or may not be legal. Once we've got that out of the way, we can decide what we want to do with moving forward. So I see no harm in asking for, as I understand it, what is it called? A summary disposition?
That's one of the methods.
Okay, yeah. So that's, yeah.
Allison?
Just one thing that really hasn't been stated here, and I think it's interesting that on our same agenda, we have an action item coming up at the moment looking to terminate our contract with Common Legal. And when I was having conversations about the Crockery Lake agreement with Gary, one of the things that our administrator asked was if we could get a legal opinion on record from Common Legal. And if you look at our current county policies, that is something that an administrator can ask for. And I sent back to him and I said, you may definitely ask for a legal opinion from them. And it again was asked for me to ask them. And that is an administrator role that they have the opportunity to do so. And I just think it's, again, interesting timing that we are doing this today when we don't have our representative here that did draft the contract with Chester and is not being able to give the opportunity to speak to this matter before the board, and that does concern me. To me, it looks very political. And when I say that, I've had coffee with Josh. That was something that you had mentioned that you wished we hadn't entered into this. And to me, this was something that was mentioned more on the political side of things, not as the concern of the legalities at the time. And I just, again, have concern that when we as a county are looking to help those around us, I have always thought we were looking to truly help people and not basing it on politics. We as a board invite people to come and present ideas to us to consider. This, again, the Chester one was not something that was presented with only a month's amount of time. This was something that I became aware of in 2022. And in fact, Joe Bush was the one that came to me and shared with me that the quality of the lake was very poor. There was a lot of work done to try to provide opportunities for them to seek funding. And one thing that you mentioned, John, in your speech was basically that Joe Bush's legal attorney came and presented some information. And yes, while this board always needs to have information presented to us, this wasn't the first time that Joe was aware that we were working on this project. So I'm just going to state for the record that on Labor Day, before Jennifer Jones came to present for the very first time, Joe called me up that evening to warn me that if we were to continue proceeding forward, that this was going to become very political. It wasn't a warning of the concerns of the avenues we were doing to pursue the funding. It was concern for a political hotbox. And again, like, why are we here? We are here to serve the people. And so to me, that's all that I was doing for the last couple of years, was trying to seek ways to help Chester. Chester is our smallest township. It is not a township that sits with millionaires and billionaires on their lakes to help fund them. That was something that we took into consideration. And again, I just really hope that the discussion that we're taking place today, that it is not politics, And it's truly because everyone here is trying to do the right thing legally and is trying to protect the county for whatever you're doing. That's all I'm asking, is that that's what you're taking into consideration.
I appreciate that. So that's why I said that I believe the prior board was acting in the good faith of the community. I believe that, right? I think you made a mistake. And from what I always look at it from the legal standpoint. I can't get away from that. There's nothing political about this for me at all. I was not pleased when I saw it back in December. I just couldn't believe it. And so it hasn't changed for me. This is just trying to protect the county from something I see could be potentially very risky. And we have an avenue to try to help us through this. And I think that the community expects us to act reasonably and responsibly here. It's as simple as that for me. Anybody else?
I can,
Josh?
yeah, I completely understand Allison's concern about the political nature of it. I came and spoke out against the passage of this, so I understand your concern. And if this proves to be a legal contract, then I hope we can maybe have that political discussion, although the horse may already be out of the barn, and I may not be able to do anything about it. But I would love to have the legal opinions that we could at least get to having that conversation. And I think from a political standpoint too, I just showed with the Campbell plant motion that somebody who is vehemently opposed politically to something can vote in favor of it. And that vote was in favor of a second review of something. So for me, this is one and the same. Whether I agree or disagree with the decision you guys made, looking at the legality of it, I think is just as prudent to do. So yeah, that's it.
Joe?
Just a couple comments. And I don't want to belabor it too much, but I disagree with a couple of the statements that you had made earlier. I do believe there was mutual consideration. The county's decision, the county board's decision was multifaceted. It was looking at using Monsanto funding, which was specifically related to water quality and other issues, looking at park property, looking at county property, et cetera. So it wasn't just one thing, also taking into consideration the public that uses the park. So in my view, there was mutual consideration. You mentioned the administrative fee. Commissioner Miedema alluded to this township being one of our smallest local units. So it makes perfect sense to me that if they're going to be doing the work and managing the work for the project, that they would need a very small amount of money to help pay for whatever they're doing. And actually putting that in the contract in written form is better than leaving it ambiguous, because otherwise then there could be questions later as to, hey, how did you use that money? Did you use too much? So being specific, I think, was a wise idea. And then speaking of payment in particular, I happen to know that our former interim administrator, because of the timing of this, and it was December 10 or whatever that was, specifically instructed our fiscal services department to process the payment for this. Well, apparently that directive was either refused or overridden by someone else on the outside. I don't know what happened. I don't know why the payment wasn't made. Perhaps there's information there that I'm unaware of, but I do know that the former administrator instructed that the payment be made.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
just a question for Commissioner Moss. Are you saying that you're opposed to finding out if a judge agrees that this is a legal contract or not?
I was specifically referencing mutual consideration, the administrative fee, and the payment.
Well, I understand that, but are you opposed to hearing from a judge whether this is a legal contract?
I think trying to take this to a court is a method by which you can try to nuke a decision by the previous board. Yeah, I disagree with that.
Okay, anybody else? Doug?
Yeah, I guess, on that last part by Commissioner Moss, I do agree that, we need to be careful how we use, the court of law, whether we're using declaratory ruling, Not sure exactly the process of that, whether that's a 6-month process is going to cost us 20,000 or whether it's a 1-month process that costs us 2,000. I mean, we might hear a little bit about that, but, just the idea that, I voted against this. I don't think it's a favorable contract to Ottawa County, and, we have a legal opinion by Plunkett Cooley that it may indeed be invalid. I would like to explore that 25% with Chester Township. I guess I'd like to make a motion to, have that deliberation with Chester Township to see if we could reduce it by 75% prior to going to any sort of declaratory ruling.
But again, Doug, it doesn't make any difference if it's 25% or dollar. The issue is, the opinion is saying that the county doesn't have the authority to enter into this agreement at all. And that's all we're asking. And so it's not a subject to negotiation anymore. It's a question of, okay, if the contract is valid, then it stands on its terms, right? You don't have to go back, and if you can, I mean, parties can always renegotiate a contract, but otherwise we're obligated by that contract, right? And so it's not a question of us going back and trying to work it out with Chester. It just can't happen that way. That's not what this is about.
Okay.
So that's the difference, Allison.
Your words, obligated to the contract. We had a board that voted to obligate us to that contract. And for me, this is, again, a misuse of a judge position, a court ruling. You're basically asking for, like what Commissioner Moss was saying and Commissioner Zylstra, that you're basically asking for the judge to side with you and based on decisions you did not make in December. And that is something that concerns me for any board, that a turnover that happens, that is a political game. I have concern about this, and great concern about how we're using our elected official position.
So there's no doubt. I mean, Joe used the word nuke. You used the word misuse. You just said it, the court's going to side with me. There's no doubt after this meeting, you're going to go to social media and tell the public the same thing, right? I don't have any doubt. But that's not what we're here for. We have a legal opinion from trusted attorneys that tells us that this is how it is. And for us to ignore that and just do our own thing, that's what has gotten us into trouble in the past. We can't operate that way. And this is simply asking the court. It's not for me. I will live with the court's decision. This is not political. This is prudent. Joe.
Yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying, and I don't wholly disagree with it. I understand the principles that you're trying to use. It's a little hard to go along with for a couple reasons. Number one, I've always thought this agreement was very favorable to the county and to Chester and to our citizens. I've fully, believed that the county can absolutely enter into these intergovernmental agreements. And I was led to believe over the last month and a half that today would be a discussion on this issue. Instead of a discussion as was promised, although we are having discussion, it actually became an action item to try to reverse the prior board's decision. So, you've mentioned that we have an opinion. Not knowing the process that this was done, not having any other information on it, thinking this was just going to be a discussion today, I could have brought a dueling opinion because I know attorneys who think that this is absolutely fine. So you went and got an opinion from Mike, and ironically, I usually agree with Mike on things. And so we have one opinion from an attorney that says he doesn't, it's invalid. When there are other opinions, generally speaking, of attorneys that think it is valid. So I understand the principles by which you're trying to move forward. I get that you want to go to a court and have a judge decide. I do think it's, not the right move. So I'm going to vote no,
So
but I
again-
understand.
Again, you say that this is for me to reverse a prior board's action. I agree that if the court ruled that this contract's not valid, then that effect of that is to reverse your action. But that's not the purpose of this motion to the court. It is to ask the court to make a ruling. If the net effect is in favor of the contract, I've already said we have a contract. But if the net effect is that we don't have a contract, then you're right. The decision of the prior board is null and void. That's the effect. That's not an intention on our part. It's the effect of a court action. And I agree that attorneys may disagree, which is exactly the point of taking it to the court. That's exactly what Jordan had said earlier. That's the point. Josh, anybody? All right, ready for Jim?
Just a comment. I think it's incumbent on us to get a judicial review of this, to go ahead with a contract that has some cloudiness or questions about whether it's a legal document or a contract that can actually be executed, opens us up to litigation from other parties that will be trying to turn it into a political thing. So I think this protects the county by making sure we've checked all the boxes on it.
All right, ready to vote? Justin, can we take a roll call on this one?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
No.
Mrs. Medema,
No.
Mrs. Wenzel,
No.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bruger,
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mr. Jorsma,
Yes.
and Mr. Teeples.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is to approve the agreement for termination for legal services of the Common Law Group effective February 21. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Support.
All right, discussion.
I think we should accept it.
All right, can we take a,
With a couple other comments.
okay,
I was trying to formulate them. So I don't think that we should move forward with this one. I'm sure the votes are already tallied, so we're going to. But Common Legal is one of, if not the best constitutional, pro-citizen, pro-individual rights, pro-freedom law firm in the state. I have had the privilege to work with them the last couple of years, greatly enjoyed it. They had excellent staff attorneys here who dedicated a significant amount of time to the county to try to right the ship, if you will. There was a lot of things that were very, very poorly done in the past, and they started working very hard to put new processes in place, things like that. I understand that there are individuals who have sort of had it out for them from the very beginning, see them as sort of a political appointment that's not based on merit, things like that. And I can assure you that's the furthest thing from the truth. They developed excellent relationships inside the county. They worked very hard. And as the chair for the last 2 years, I can report I was extremely happy with their work. They defended lawsuit after lawsuit from the left as we continually were attacked over the last 2 years. So I greatly appreciate that and all the hard work they put in. And I also appreciate the amount of hours that they donated towards the county to help. So I also think it should be clear that even, we have in the agreement kind of a transition period. We're not going to use it, not to my knowledge, because we're immediately looking to hire another attorney. And I think it should be clarified that they are not leaving because they want to. They're leaving, or they are being terminated or resigning because they're being forced out. So I want to make that clear, and I disagree with the decision.
Doug?
Yeah, I wonder if we can kind of talk through a lot of questions I've received over the weekend as far as the prepay amount and how you foresee that that happening. It's number 6, parties waive all claims for any prior payments made to the firm by the county and unpaid invoices owing to the firm for the year 2025. I believe, do we have fiscal here?
Yeah, Karen's here.
Karen, do you mind kind of telling us where we are or what we can be expected to? How can we, this relationship with Common, what it looks like now? And how we could expect that to end? Does that make sense or no? Like I said, I had a lot of folks reach out this weekend. I myself have the concern that, we've prepaid 250,000. I don't know how much of that we've used out, how much of that we plan to use out, how much we're going to leave with Common, if we're going to leave money with them, and what mechanism, if any, we'll be pursuing to, I would say claw back that money or, ask for it back. So
I can only tell you what we've paid and what we've paid as far as invoices. So we did pay the $249,000 in December. They submitted their December invoice with a credit of the first 49,000. So that was credited, so that was subtracted, and so we paid that invoice. We did receive January invoice, which is not paid at this time.
what is the amount of the genuine invoice?
I think right around, had another credit on it, but the actual amount due would have been right around 25,000.
On top of the 25,000?
Yes.
So
So the
are we
total
able
bill
to,
would have been about,
are we able to not pay that additional 25 and take that out of the prepay?
I don't know what was negotiated or what was discussed, but that bill is currently sitting
Okay.
in my
And then
office.
do we have an idea for February, how much billings we may see, 25,000, 30,000?
I have not seen the bill, so I don't know what the amount was. I know that it would at least be the minimum, 20, whatever they had.
Would that be prorated through resignation date or through the end of the month? That's really not been
And
talked
I
about
would
either.
assume that it would be for services provided.
Right, so it would be prorated as to the resignation date.
For the time that they worked.
Okay, so we're not talking a ton of money that would be able to take out of that prepay amount, right? I mean, you're saying 50,000 for January and pro rata maybe 25,000? Does that sound about right?
Well, if you count February, it'd be another.
So we're talking 100,000 that, we'll have used out of the 250. So I'm inclining to agree with Commissioner Moss that the transition period won't see a lot of services offered by Common Group. So we may very well end up, if we don't ask for that money back or Common doesn't offer to give it back to us, leaving about 150,000 on the table, right? Which is about 6 months' work. Is that, I'm just kind of, on top of my head, kind of going through some numbers.
Well, that would be the remaining months. I mean, that prepayment was through September 30th, so
Right. Okay.
that math works out.
We had this discussion way back in 22 about severance, right? And, I understand that prepay is not the same as severance. They're a service provider. They're not a, employee per se. There was a discussion at the time to make the director of DEI department give her a 6-month severance. I was against that. I said, let's bring it down to 3 months, right? And let's kind of all talk about all department heads having a 3-month severance. We talked about interim administrator Wetmore, and I was in favor of 3-month severance for him.
These were vendors.
Right, and I understand that.
There's an advance.
I understand
This is
that,
what they were told.
right, I understand that.
We were not paying them late. So they were paid within their 30 days. Why they requested an advance is an entirely different question.
No, I understand, but and this is not necessarily a question of fiscal, but it's a question of, you know,
Their terms were 30 days and they were paid within 30 days
okay,
of when we got the invoice signed.
okay. But do you see my point that, leaving 150,000 on the table is basically equivalent to 6 months work that we're,
Doug, I don't think that your math is correct on this, and Karen wasn't part of the
That's not
negotiation.
my.
okay.
I've had-
Well, maybe we can get explanation of that because I do think it's relevant. I think it's a lot of people have reached out. I, personally don't think Common was a great fit. Having said that, I'm not comfortable, with them resigning with, them owing us 150,000. Maybe those numbers are not the case, but.
So I can address it. So there's $174,000 left on the prepaid Coleman contract. The 3 months and it works out to be about $25,000 a month. So for 3 months of continued assistance to, assuming it's Ron Bulci, right? That's 25 hours a week. It works out to be $25,000 a month times 3 months. That's $75,000 value. Under the agreement, paragraph 6, Doug, they are waiving, it's actually $26,000 invoice for the month of January. That's over and above their minimum 25,000.
Right.
And so, and we haven't got an invoice for anything over, and we haven't got the February invoice, but presumably that wouldn't be a whole lot because we had already told them, or the administration already told them to, control their time. So we're not talking a lot in February, but between the 26,000 in January that they're waiving, giving up, and the 3 months of continued service to the county that they'd be available. And I don't necessarily agree with you, Joe. When you sell companies, the manager or owner stays on as a consultant working, right? They've agreed to do that. And presumably they can perform services like contract review, for an example. I told you I have 120 contracts that are coming in for me from community mental health, routine contracts. That's just one department. They can do that kind of work, right? Get the value out of it. So between the 3 months value of their service, which we've already paid, and the 26,000 that they're going to waive, we're over $100,000, 174 back, plus whatever we get. It's not invoiced for February, which again shouldn't be much. So of the 174, over $100,000 of that is going to be worked off or paid off. And it leaves the county with somewhere between, I'm guessing, $50,000 to $75,000 in costs that we have to absorb by by terminating their services. That's what it really works down to.
And I was just doing the math as well and listening to your first numbers, combining them with Doug's numbers, and I came up with, at max, it's about $73,000. And again, that doesn't include whatever was done extra in February, which, as you noted, may not be much. I am great, as far as using Coleman goes, and Jack, Jordan, I hope we do use Jack. I like Jack. Disagree, as we do with some of his opinions, but he's been great to work with. And having him work underneath, if we move forward with the second part of this, with hiring Dickinson Wright to assist, I think is a great utilization of his talents for contracts, as Chair Teeples had mentioned. So the Coleman Group, having not been in the negotiation, but having been in the area, in the room next door, I got to meet Mr. Coleman, shook his hand, again, disagree with some things, but, very genuine individual. And my understanding is that the negotiation was very amicable, and they agreed to part ways with us under fairly favorable terms, all things considered. Do I wish that we were able to keep the $73,000? You talked about it being a severance package. Absolutely. If we don't end up using that and Coleman doesn't end up using that, I would love it if the Coleman Group would make a donation back to the county, maybe to our park system, maybe to CMH, maybe to one of the organizations that aligns with their values, whatever they may be, that the county supports. I think it's a great opportunity for Coleman to leave on even better terms than might otherwise be the case. So yeah, I think there's opportunity to move forward here, and I'm looking forward to doing that. It's a small thing, but I just wanted to put this on public record because some of my constituents had asked me about it. There was a comment made at one of the last couple of board meetings about we couldn't ask Coleman a question because they weren't here. And a few people asked me why weren't they there? No one said why. And the public, I don't think, was aware that their hours were slashed to 24 hours a week, and they were barely having time to cover the basics. So there was no time to sit into board meetings. It wasn't even available. So just so that the public knows that, it's not that they were just absent. It's that they physically could not be here due to their hours being cut so low.
Kind of interesting to me because they always talk about all these hours that we never see that they donate to us, where they work and they donate all those hours, but they wouldn't show up for an actual commissioners meeting.
They had already used their hours.
Oh, I know, but the other hours that they say they given to the county
They
where, you know,
They
they
have.
didn't charge.
Allison?
I just want to, first of all, thank Campbell and Lido for the work they've done here in the county for the past 2 years. They have stood under extreme Democrat lawfare. I believe personally they have led with integrity, professionalism. They have shown respect for all staff, for all elected officials. They have built great working relationships here across the county. If you spend time talking to staff, many, I believe, would tell you similarly. I personally do not wish to have them dismissed. I also understand that the majority of the board has every right to have legal representative who they want to work with. I would love to have them continue working here, and I also respect other opinions. They have a greatly improved processes that were lacking for years, and that's one thing I am thankful for. One thing that I wish that had been considered before we came today is I would have desired a little bit of a greater process. I would have liked to have seen board leadership work with Common Legal and at the same time do an RFP with the understanding that if that was the full board's desire was to move on, to not continue a working relationship with them after their contract was fulfilled, that we could be going through that process together. And today it feels very quick to put somebody in as an interim. We could have taken the time to have quality legal representation here for a time while we were doing a search, and they're doing a phenomenal job. I think right now with the change that the board looks like you're seeking to do is there is going to be some gap at the moment due to how things are taking place. So I can't revert time, but I guess I wish that that had been a consideration.
I guess my mom said, if you can't say nothing nice, then don't say nothing at all. So I'm going to keep my comments brief. You know, I'm a homeschooled kid, so the Coleman Group has done a lot of good work for the homeschooling community. I have a lot of respect for their work for civil liberties, for constitutional law topics, but when it comes to municipal governance, they don't understand municipal law. And I made this point to you early on, Commissioner Moss, when at the very first meeting and you dismissed prior counsel suddenly, you know, the thing that you're claiming this is happening now, what this has been discussed for a long time. Nobody's unaware that this is in the works. But when you brought in the Coleman Group, I said, you know, Joe in the hallway right there, I said, first of all, this looks like you're self-dealing because they're related to your family. You're doing this without an open process. There's a lot of Ottawa County and Kent County attorney firms that are extremely competent in municipal law. And you're using relationships that are related to your family out of Lansing to represent us. I said, don't start off this way. This is when I was still part of Ottawa Impact, because this is not the precedent. We're trying to build trust with the community. Don't do the exact thing that we always criticize the other side of doing. And you said, we have the votes, vote how you want.
Sir, you were not there at the first meeting.
I'm
So
talking
I
about the
don't know
second
what you're
meeting.
talking about.
The second meeting when
And
we
the
had
other
to actually
thing
approve this.
that I should clarify that you just
And I'm not
stated
done with my comments,
incorrect.
Commissioner Moss. I'd like to finish.
Gentlemen,
I'd like to
okay,
finish.
just bring it down.
You said that the
Gotcha.
common legal group
Joe,
is
Joe,
related.
Joe, let him finish.
Business partner, to your business partner. But what I'd like to say is, just case in point that the public was able to see, when I questioned Jack Jordan about the liability of the Crockery Lake contract and that the indemnification clause doesn't indemnify the county when we're the funder. Typically speaking, when you're the funder of the contract, you get to call the ball on who, holds the liability on it. Jack Jordan's response was, there's an indemnification clause in there. He failed to go on to say, yeah, but it doesn't indemnify us. It's one-sided, completely one-sided. It indemnifies everyone else, but not us. I don't feel like that is representing the county. I don't feel like that's competent on our side to make sure that if we are sharing liability or if we're bearing all the liability, that he's going on to explain a good reason why that should be the case when we're bearing all the costs. So I've also seen multiple times in closed session where very, very important points were being made that they remain silent on to protect your interests. I don't think that is working on behalf of the county. And so this has got to stop.
It does.
And again, trying to share supposed information from closed session. I just want to make clear that the common legal group is not related to my family, which is what the commissioner just erroneously said. And I'll leave
I
my
clarified
will
your
just leave
business
my
partner.
comments there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
You said it
Kendra,
20
anybody?
times.
Okay, let's take a roll call, please.
Mr. Bruger,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
No.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
No.
Mr. Joritsma,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
No.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
No.
and Mr. Teeples.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is moving, it's the wage study contract with Baker Tilly. It's a motion to approve the contract.
Mr. Chair, I think we're actually on.
Excuse me, I'm still,
S.
that's right, I'm still on S. Sorry about that, Mr. Bolche. So Mr. Bolche is here for the record. It's a motion to retain Ron Bolche as lead counsel, Dickinson Wright and its attorneys, agents, and contractors as interim Ottawa County Corporate Counsel to perform corporate legal services to Ottawa and its departments, funding units, departments, and boards and commissioners until a permanent corporation counsel can be hired.
So moved. Make that motion.
Support.
Okay, discussion. And Mr. Bolche is here, if anybody wants to. Ron, would you come up to the podium, please? Thank you for being here. All right, so questions, comments, go.
How are we going to handle conflicts with either Ron or Dickinson and Wright so when they represent a whole bunch of local units? And we do contracts with local units and things like that. Just curious.
Absolutely. We'll handle them within the bounds of the code of ethics that we are living under every day. If it is a mutually advantageous situation where both parties agree, we will proceed. If it's an antagonistic or conflicting situation, we will abdicate from both sides because we will not advocate against one client versus another. We've used that. I've represented a lot of municipalities inside and outside of Ottawa County. It's the policy we've used, I'm obligated to use, and it's worked well.
Thank you.
Doug?
Gonna go first.
Allison?
Okay. Maybe you just answered this, but I guess maybe you'll have to clarify a little bit with your words. Whose responsibility would it be if there was a conflict, whose responsibility would it to be to seek different legal counsel to represent them? Would it be the local municipality, such as a township, or would it be the county's responsibility to seek an outside firm to represent them if there's a conflict?
If we are in an adversarial situation where one side is going to prevail and one side is not, we will leave both sides of the dispute. So both parties would seek independent counsel, and neither side would worry about whether we're couching our advice because we represent the other side in other situations. We would totally leave the dispute.
So I guess I just want to say to the board then, I do still have concern there. I think there's a difference between townships seeking to employ the same corporate counsel. But when you have a county who's working often with local municipalities on a regular basis, I do have concern that this could cause more work that's unnecessary for us to have to seek outside counsel on a regular basis. Case in point, even with Chester that we just got done talking about with the Crockery Lake contract, I do have concern with having someone in this capacity, and it's not something that I stand alone in. I think I shared an email with you and encouraged our board to reach out to Grand Haven Township and just to receive information there. And that was my understanding that Ron, I believe, used to be legal representative there, and I don't think is there currently, correct?
Correct.
So I'm hoping that board members here did some research and some concerns that were shared there.
Doug?
Sure. So I voted no on the previous motion because I was concerned about, Coleman resigning with 150,000, at least in my calculation, owing to us. I guess there's the idea that they will continue to work for Ottawa County in some respect. Like I said, I kind of agree with Commissioner Moss. I mean, they won't be in the building. They won't have access to resources in a real measure, but maybe you can kind of talk about how you foresee working with common groups that we can kind of get to the point where we are down using up, 24 hours a week of services. And, you're going to be the lead corporate counsel, and just kind of address that issue, please.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Jack Jordan is the only person at Coleman whom I personally know. Excuse me. But I've dealt with him on a couple of different occasions. When we, Dickinson Wright, interviewed for the Parks Commission work, Jack was involved in that interview, and we do the Parks Commission work for Ottawa County already, as I think you know. And also Jack called me when there was a dispute with the Elections Commission, County Election Commission, with the Lucy Ebel recall, and worked with him extensively. He was a pleasure to deal with. I enjoyed working with him, and it's very cooperative and a pleasure. So my thought is that with regard to FOIA matters that are pending, with regard to the standard contract reviews, et cetera, I would welcome talking to Jack and seeing what they can do. They've got institutional knowledge. They are well-trained professional attorneys. I'd like to use them.
Okay. Well, I would encourage that. Like I said, I think that we could have gotten maybe to hopefully better point with that relationship as far as, the prepay, but, if you can find ways to cooperate with KLG and, making sure that, you preserve your position of chief counsel, but use them in a way that you see fit. I'm comfortable, with having you as our corporate counsel, so I'll be voting yes. And just hopefully that, you can work with them for the next 3 months and, make sure Ottawa County taxpayers get the value out of that relationship and out of that prepay amount, so.
Agreed.
All right.
Jordan?
Thanks for being here. Excited to have a fellow Calvin grad hopefully joining us.
Oh, boy.
Those some fighting words right there.
Some of the other commissioners' questions, I guess. Since you've been representing various municipalities within Ottawa County, how many times have you been in a antagonistic legal matter with the county? I just want to know, is this regular? Is this every month we're going to need to find new or has this ever even happened before?
The situation arises frequently, given the municipalities that I represent. It's a discussion that's held frequently. Virtually never is it an antagonistic situation where I need to bow out of both sides or where my firm needs to bow out of both sides. It is almost always a situation where we can basically work to, we're putting together an agreement, trying to be mutually advantageous to every side of the agreement. And we disclose our involvement, and both sides say, that's great. We don't have to pay 2 attorneys to fight because we're basically in agreement. We want this put down on paper. We want to make sure we understand it. We want it explained to us, but we're not fighting about this. That's well over 90%, 95%, almost always the situation.
Excellent. I see this less as a liability, but more as a distinct, very strong advantage. I'm excited to have a corporate counsel that is also representing our municipalities because we work so closely with them. So thank you.
Joe?
I am a little bit concerned about the process of getting here. I had no idea beforehand that we were going to be looking to appoint new counsel. So this is a little bit new. Haven't gotten time to sit down and talk to you, Ron. I did reach out to several people I know in the legal community around Ottawa County. Heard some various opinions, as I'm sure you'll is normal for any attorney. Some very glowing, some very negative. I have a question about how this relationship is going to work on an interim basis, or how you see it working. If there is additional need in the county, and you need to potentially refer work to a colleague or another attorney, is there a possibility that you will refer work to any outside firms that are not Dickinson Wright?
Absolutely.
Is that firm your daughter's firm?
No.
I just want to highlight that your daughter works at the same firm and is a shareholder with Sarah Howard. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The lady who keeps suing over and over and over and over. The county.
I would not be referring work to a civil rights law firm.
Great.
My daughter keeps waiting for the day when she can sue one of my clients. I keep telling her, keep waiting, but she would not.
She may have the chance now. They're looking for opportunities, Ron. So.
Josh?
You good?
You done?
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Aside from the unfortunate circumstance that you graduated from Calvin College, go Dutch. Sorry, Jordan, I just had to get that in there. I paid tuition to both places. That's okay. Good. All right, we're okay then. Ron, it was a pleasure to work with you at the City of Grand Haven when I was on City Council there about 10 years ago. You always keep your cool in stressful situations, and I've always been impressed with that. The fact that you've been practicing law since 1978, hate to tell you, I was born in 1977.
Me too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you've been practicing law longer than just about any of us have, I don't know, had a conscious brain. So I am very grateful that you would accept the opportunity to come and work for us on an interim basis. So thank you for that. I think my question is going to be to Gary and staff. Once assuming we move forward with this, I want to make sure that I'd love to keep Ron around and Dickinson Wright around based on their experience, but he's here at an interim basis. And so I want to make sure that we're putting out an RFP as soon as possible to acquire our long-term representative for the county.
We were ready again to work with HR. It's not going to go out in an RFP. It's going to go out as a general posting.
Okay. Oh, right. It's internal. Apologies. Yep.
We want to get back into the idea of having our own attorney on staff here, and we want to grow that person into being an asset for Ottawa County. So again, Ron brings, both Rons now bring a lot of legal knowledge, and we're going to utilize Ron Bolche and towards our end goal of getting somebody permanent on staff, and have him look at those credentials as well as Ron France. The other thing I did want to just mention, talking to David Coleman the other day, we did talk about Jack Jordan. Jack's been on vacation for 2 weeks. When he gets back, I'm going to sit down with him and talk about some of the things that the chair had talked about, looking at contracts, because, you know, we got a substantial amount of them that are done. And we have a process of vetting contracts that we go through on the system where they get reviewed by multiple people. And again, I think it's a good process. I think it's something that we can engage Jack on, you know, for that 24-hour piece. So that's what we'll be talking to him about.
I can maybe add a little bit there. We have been working on the draft of the job description. We should be prepared, depending on board action this morning, to post that very, very soon. Coincidentally, Ron Bolche and I are about 1 year apart when we started practicing law. I know him very well. I think we tried a few cases together. I can't remember, on opposite sides. I can't remember exactly how they came out. I think I won them all, but I'm not 100% sure.
I was smart enough to not ever take you on in court. I settled.
Irony that I just want to throw out there is back in 1985, I tried a homeschool case against Dave Coleman. And I think that's the basis of his interest in homeschooling. I won the case. It was a jury trial, and a couple, the DeYoungs, were not using a certified teacher in their homeschooling. I won the jury trial, but Dave won the ultimate decision in the Michigan Supreme Court, which held that the statute was unconstitutional. But I do remember him from a long, long time ago. He was a good guy, and I enjoyed talking to him last Friday. I believe that the agreement we have is a fair one. It was done over the course of about 3 hours with a lot of input from everybody. I believe he leaves with good feelings towards Ottawa County, but I think we're ready for another direction. And Ron Bolche is the guy to get us going in that direction.
I also need to make sure that you heard me in my, first of all, thank you, Mr. Bolche, for being here. You heard me in my last comments that I began my career over 30 years ago as an environmental lawyer at Dickinson Wright. But I haven't worked there in 25 years, and Mr. Bolche and I had never met. I just want that to be clear on the record as I vote to support him, because I think he is the right guy and Dickinson Wright's the right firm to help us through this. So, but I just want you to all know that.
Could I just confirm that with regard, I am an interim appointee, if anything, and I will not be a candidate for anything beyond that. That's going, speaking of my daughter and conflicts, I've got 2 daughters and both of them said, this is going the wrong way, Dad. I don't need the time. I don't need the hours. I don't need additional clients. I welcome the opportunity to help in the interim if that is of benefit. That is my sole interest. I'll not be pursuing anything else.
May I ask one question? Sure. Yeah. Commissioner Zylstra and some other commissioners and I have been participating in, we call them lunch and learns with the employees of Ottawa County in various parts. And one thing they continually bring up that is really important to them is access to you, because they're working on contracts. They have a lot coming across their desks that these directors are trying to make sure are done. And they really do value having someone that they can physically walk up to and meet. And I know that you're only interim and you don't intend to have a permanent office here, but may we potentially have a discussion about having some office hours here where they can come in and meet here at the county? Or is it by, where you just generally be here? Or is it all going to be by appointment?
I will not generally be here. That I know. But I'm willing to have a discussion about however we can best move things forward.
I know in a permanent position, we're looking to have somebody fill that office. So that is in the works. I want to make sure that folks out there hear that.
Ellison.
I guess hearing that concerns me. Again, I feel like we are jumping too quickly. This is nothing against Ron. I just, as a board, to not have our legal representative here, that is concerning to me. I feel like we are moving too quickly in this manner. And I don't know Ron. I am wondering how Ron came to be selected. That hasn't been shared by board leadership. So I would really appreciate that information to be shared with the good of the whole.
Pretty simple. We learned of Ron's reputation on the townships. It seemed pretty clear that he had the skill sets that we needed, and I reached out to him. And that's as simple as that. Because we knew it would be an interim basis. And that's all we needed, someone to help us through the hump. And so that's how it happened.
What do you mean that's how it happened?
I called him.
You called who?
I called Ron Bochy and asked him if he'd be available
But how did you know about Ron beforehand?
because of people telling me of his reputation in Grand Haven and other places.
People just started reaching out to you to tell you that, or you started reaching out to others, or like, again, just trying to understand.
So
This
Ron,
is the first, we literally got this on Friday. So I don't know how long you've been working on this. What information did you use to gather? It's a fair question. Like, the whole board deserves to know.
yeah, that's exactly right. So Ron's reputation speaks for itself. And when I learned of that reputation, talking to different people, it was a no-brainer, including to Ron and people that have worked with him, Josh, other people. And then looking at his background, I said, this is exactly the kind of guy that we could possibly use. Made perfect sense. And if he's available to help us through this, it made sense. So I reached out to him and said, what do you think? That's
Okay,
that's about it.
My inquiries, with only having literally one business day to be able to check, I have not come up with the same information you have. And so that's why, again, of reaching out to you and the whole board, I'm not buying the reputation.
Okay. Then I understand how you're going to vote. So,
That's right.
Kendra,
I would like the individual names of everyone that was involved in that.
look,
No.
that's not even remotely possible because of how,
On this board, the individual names on this board that was involved, that were involved in reaching out and making this decision.
I reached out to Mr. Bolche.
So you were the only one that talked about this decision, just you, no one else on the board.
So in the discussion about what we do as legal counsel, I had multiple discussions about where are we going with this? If we
No, I'm
move-
asking which commissioners were involved in this.
I can jump in, John.
No,
I
I'm
don't
asking-
know
I
if I
would
can
like him
answer
to
the question because it's such a broad one. I would assume that I've talked to a number of people on this commission. Go
You
ahead.
don't know which commissioners you talked to make this decision,
What, the decision to reach out to Mr. Bolche?
that you would like Mr. Bolche to have this position?
Everybody on this board has got this agenda. Everybody on this board knew that I was reaching out. We had, I don't know
You're
how to
not
answer
answering the
I don't know how to
question.
answer your question.
Which commissioners did you talk to, or did you solely make this decision by yourself and then reach out to him? Or did you talk, which commissioners did you speak with about Mr. Bolche and his position?
I don't know how to answer your question. I've talked to a number of commissioners about
Who
Mr.
were
Bolche.
those commissioners?
Let's assume all of them. Let's assume, I don't think it was all of them, but it
No,
was,
it wasn't all of
I
them,
know.
It wasn't me.
No,
all of
I
them.
know, but Joe, I did talk to you about changing legal counsel, and you even suggested at one time offering me a list of law firms, right? So
You're a lawyer, you do know who you spoke with. I don't know why you won't just answer who you spoke with.
I know I don't, I can tell you that I probably talked to everybody, but I didn't talk to you. And I
Or
didn't talk to
Allison or
Joe.
Joe?
I did talk to Joe. He knew I was going to be looking.
Not about.
He didn't know about Mr. Bolche. I don't even know if I knew Mr. Bolche at the time. In fact, I
So
don't think I
did
did.
you talk to Jacob? Or Josh, or Phil, or Doug, or
I
Jim?
think absolutely everybody understood that I was looking at Mr. Bolche. No doubt
Except
about it.
us, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I don't think Commissioner Rhodey knew either.
No, I didn't reach out.
She's sick
Josh, did I
today.
mention her?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I can verify that, when we were talking about who to call, I didn't remember how long ago that was. You did not know, if I recall the conversation, John, you didn't know Ron Bolche. But I actually had a question about something procedurally. back in January or December. I don't remember what it was. And I texted him on a Friday night at about 10 PM.
Meetings Act or something, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he was kind enough to answer my call. And I just knew Ron from having been on the city of Grand Haven. But a little part of me doesn't quite understand the line of questioning, Kendra, because the chair didn't make any agreements with Ron. He didn't sign any contracts with Ron. He found somebody. I don't know, you guys haven't signed a contract, right? Yeah, okay.
We do not have.
You know, and this is how you do it. You seek somebody out and you bring them forward, especially on an interim basis. That was exactly how it was done with the W talent. That's exactly how it was done with all the other groups. So I don't have a problem with the way that John did it.
There is a difference.
Mhm.
There is?
Yeah, there is a difference, yeah. At least one thing that I guess, maybe people aren't saying is that John had discussions with 6 people
Correct.
and not the other 4.
Joe, you chose John Anderson while I was at my daughter's wedding.
Just,
I found out about it on the agenda at my daughter's wedding that you were select. Never met him, never heard his name before. So don't give us that. That's ridiculous.
And actually asked for input from others to be considered. So not the same thing.
yeah, there were multiple people. There was a vote.
So does
in
anybody,
public.
so the motion on the table is to appoint Ron Bolche as interim legal counsel,
Yes,
corporate
we need to
counsel.
get off that quickly, right?
So can we bring it to the vote? Mr. Roebuck.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bruger,
Yes.
Mr. Joritsma,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
No.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
No.
Mrs. Wenzel,
No.
and Mr. Teeples.
Yes,
And the motion passes.
thank you very much.
Thank you,
Look forward to
Ron.
working with you.
Incorrect.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
could I motion for a 5-minute recess?
Yeah, can we take 5 minutes? We had 2 more issues and then public comment basically, and so let's take 5, all right? We'll adjourn until 11:20.
Perfect.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Round two. Sunday.
Okay, we're reconvening. There we go. So the next thing on the agenda is item 8T. It's the former 7J action item. It's the wage study contract with Baker Tilly. It's a motion to approve the contract with Baker Tilly Advisory Group for wage and compensation services for a total of $107,400. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, discussion. Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to reiterate my concerns that I had shared last time. I support the work that needs to be done, but I do not think the board should contract with Baker Tilly. Baker Tilly received a perfect score from the Human Rights Campaign in 2022. They've continued to promote pro-HRC and pro-DEI policy as a company even into this year. I guess you could say they are aligned. If you're unfamiliar with the Human Rights Campaign, it's a group that has been promoting some very damaging left-wing ideology. They are a leader in the space, promoting ideas like children being able to change their gender and going so far as to publish training guides and instruction manuals, telling doctors not to assume people's gender based on their biology. Again, this is not Baker Tilly doing this. This is the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign. These policies promote a whole bunch of very bad ideas. HRC and the ideology promoted by it and by the firm, Baker Tilly, overall, does not align or represent Ottawa County values. I believe we can find a firm that would better represent Ottawa County values, so we don't have to align directly with an organization, a very, very large organization that works with or aligns with the HRC. And the only other comment I have is that, their team was handpicked for Ottawa County. They have written into their proposal, at least, one of their team members has a specialty of injecting DEI ideology into local governments. I disagree with that, and I would much rather have a team chosen from Michigan, or perhaps a different firm that is not directly linked with the HRC. And so my motion would be that we table this item and instruct the HR department to find a vendor, preferably in Michigan, that does not align with the HRC.
Allison?
You get a second on that?
Yeah, Joe's posed a motion to table this issue.
I would second that.
Discussion.
So I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Moss. I think we've seen this at the federal level as well, right? Where we have a couple executive orders, I believe, from the president on January 21, kind of talking about the same DI issues. And I just want to read something from a ruling from last Friday, U.S. District Court, that was kind of directly addressing that, where the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education is suing the president. And the judge writes the following. There is a label for government action that seeks to deter principles that the government disagrees with, and that's called restriction of expression because of its message, its ideas, its subject matter, or its content. And the most blatant and egregious form of content discrimination is viewpoint discrimination. And the judge ends with the following: the certification and enforcement threat provisions of these two executive orders squarely fit unconstitutionally a bridge of freedom of speech. And I think that's important because I think this motion is going to pass. I mean, this motion is going to fail and that the item will pass. But if we're rejecting vendors based on what they may or may not have on their website as far as awards by HRC or values they may hold, I frankly think that's, as the judge says, squarely unconstitutional, right? We can judge vendors on their value, their worth, as far as the services they provide. But if we're judging vendors based on their viewpoints, as the judge right here, the most blatant and egregious form of content discrimination is viewpoint discrimination. So I want us to be careful as to how we assess vendors, and we're assessing them on their values, the services they offer, and not maybe on viewpoints that they hold. So thank you.
John. I just have a two-pointed question, I guess. Number one, is this a contract to teach or implement DEI? I don't believe so. And in terms of affiliated with DEI positions, I guess I don't understand what the difference is between the W Talent Group being awarded a contract by the county when they have similar information on their website. Now, again, they weren't being hired to teach or implement DEI, but apparently that's a position they hold as an organization. We're not hiring people for that. We're hiring them for very specific positions. So I don't understand the problem there.
I was very specific. It's related to the HRC. No one that I know of is against the values of things like diversity or inclusion in general on their face. Those things are not bad things. It's the DEI agenda, the wokeified agenda, as promoted by the HRC, that is the problem. It has led to very divisive, sometimes racist, and discriminatory behavior, and it has led to viewpoint discrimination. Case in point, when our county implemented it, they put in there some of their job applications that you had to espouse the values of DEI to be able to get through the interview process. Therefore, people who did not were automatically discriminated against. The DEI movement itself, as pushed by the HRC, promotes things like systemic racism, gender, identity, white privilege, equity, critical race theory, and we've seen the actual result in the physical world of what these policies specifically promoted by the HRC and firms aligned with them have done.
I don't.
So that, just trying to answer your question.
But I don't disagree with much of what you just said there, but I don't see how that applies to the job they're being hired for on this. They went through a competitive process. Multiple firms were brought in for consideration on this, and the recommendation was that this was the best fit for our county for the job we're trying to get done.
Yeah, and it's up to the board to make the decision. And so I'm just recommending we make a different decision.
Are we signing a contract with the HRC? I thought this was about Baker Tilly.
100% about Baker Tilly and HRC.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We are not
It's about HRC?
contracting. We are not contracting with HRC.
Oh, okay.
Nelson?
I agree with the things that Commissioner Moss has said, but I would like to add a little bit to the work that was looked at with this contract with Baker Tilly. I spent some time looking at the proposals as I had requested from our HR department. There were other firms that scored higher or very similar as Baker Tilly. The other firm out of Florida, for example, wasn't afforded an interview, yet had a very thorough proposal and has done work for municipalities. I would personally still like our board to spend a bit more time on this and direct our HR department to look at a couple of their other options. From my perspective, this is not a time-sensitive manner. And in doing a little bit of work, yeah, I do have concern with at least one of them not being granted an interview to be able to discuss potentially, I did send an email to Zach and to Scott. Scott was gone yesterday, but Zach responded back to me and answered a couple of my questions. But I do think if an interview had taken place, there could have been some opportunity there for another firm that actually scored the highest. So I just want to push on that too, not just on what Commissioner Moss is saying, but actually looking at the quality of the firm that we're looking to work with.
Actually, I had that exact same question that Commissioner Miedema is bringing up. And so I had a conversation during my due diligence with Zach on that. Would you be willing to share the same response that you gave to me on the scoring system and how it was implemented to, because No offense to Mr. Hawks, but you weren't here at that time. So yeah. And Zach was part of that.
Yes, so when we are drafting an RFP, we follow county policy. We set strict parameters and a grading rubric. And that proposal is, or that RFP is posted. We received, I believe it was 16 proposals in response. As we go through those proposals, we use that grading rubric to try to select who is, or we go through and we grade them based on those, or on the grading rubric, the proposals based on the grading rubric. And then those that generally score the highest are selected unless they don't meet the bare minimum qualifications, or if there's something in that proposal that concerns us. For example, Commissioner Miedema, you brought up that same vendor, I believe we're talking about the same one, why they weren't selected for an interview. And that's because they would only do a wage study of 42% of our positions. And that's something that we wanted a higher amount of, where Baker Tilly will do 75%.
And just to, I guess, push back on that a little bit, I guess that's where you also shared that a minimum benchmark percentage had not and was not set prior to the RFP. And that concerns me because, so for example, if you had granted them an interview, there could have been an opportunity to possibly move that benchmark. And so that's all I'm trying to ask for, is that you potentially lost out on a great company without entertaining them in an interview, with even having, unless there's stuff that I'm not sure of, that maybe communication took place that I'm not aware of. But from appearances, it looks like they weren't granted that opportunity to even counteract why you didn't allow them to have an interview.
So, yeah, Josh?
Oh, go ahead.
So there's a motion on the table there's a motion to table this issue. So we should take a vote on that. Maybe we should take a roll call on that particular motion.
Certainly. Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra.
No.
Mr. Kyers.
No.
Mrs. Miedema,
Yes.
Mr. Joritsma,
No.
Mr. Bruger,
No.
Mr. Bonema,
No.
Mr. Berry,
No.
and Mr. Teeples.
No.
Motion fails.
All right. So we're back to the original motion to approve the Baker Tilly wage compensation matter. Are we done with the discussion, Allison?
I guess, did anyone else share a concern there? Because there were interviews that were granted to some of them, but the one that actually scored the highest wasn't even allowed to have an interview. And I guess I feel like that would be our role as a board, is to encourage our departments to be seeking the best of the best. And I don't feel like one of the people even had one of the incorporations even had an opportunity. So maybe I'm the only one that feels that way.
Where were they located?
Just like the other ones have firms all over, they would have firms here, but this one is based out of Florida.
Do they have a local Michigan office?
And
I'm looking towards Zach. The reason I bring it up is because,
But again, that wasn't the mechanism used of vetting to get an interview. The location wasn't, as far as I'm aware, that wasn't the standpoint of whether or not they got an interview or not,
I get it.
right?
I'm a general contractor, and when I go in to meet with a client to look at a project, it's my job to point out all the great things that we bring to the table as a team. And if Baker Tilly pointed out that they meet 70+%, and this other organization pointed out that they only meet 42%, my homeowner has got to make a decision. My customer's got to make a decision. And if the role's reversed, I've got to make a decision to weed them down to the final cut. And even if that wasn't something that was put out there initially, it's an important thing. And so I can subjectively say, hey, that's of higher value to me or not. Go ahead, Joe. You do the same thing, yes?
Yeah, I just want to highlight, this is not just about simple percentages. I think the point that Commissioner Miedema was trying to make is that there was no standard put out there. So perhaps this firm, whichever one scored the highest, just, put forth a proposal that they, have seen be successful in other areas. If they didn't know that there was some sort of benchmark, or maybe it needs to be 50% of the jobs analyzed or 60% or whatever, maybe we would have been able to have the highest scoring company from the rubric for the same cost or less as this other one, if they would have known that they had to tweak that number. We don't know because it wasn't done.
We do know, though, that of all those interviewed, Baker Tilly was the highest scoring.
I also think that, we as a board are here to set policy and help the administration with best practice ideas. And Allison's making a good point, or Joe, that we need to be mindful of what we do. Okay, that message has been conveyed. We just need to be mindful. Doesn't mean that we can't and shouldn't vote for Baker Tilly in this instance. That's my point.
I'm happy with Mr. Van Ostel's explanation.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me.
All right, let's take a vote.
Sir, Mr. Joritsma,
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
No.
Mr. Moss,
No.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
No.
Mr. Kyers.
Yes.
Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mr. Bruger,
Yes.
and Mr. Teeples.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, last action item is to approve the fiscal year 2025 budget adjustments per the attached schedule. It's in the packet. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Support. Jim? All right, discussion. Allison?
We went over this at committee level. I just wanted to put it on record here at the board level as well. I would like to make a motion to vote separately on line item 04-1172.
I would support that motion.
So is this a motion? So this is amending the motion?
It's a motion to carve out.
Right, so we currently now are voting on fiscal year 25 budget adjustments. We have a motion to support, we're discussing that. And so this would be a motion to amend the motion to specifically vote within the budget adjustments?
Correct?
Or are you trying to amend the agenda?
No.
Are you
Sorry.
motioning to
Okay.
table this?
I could make a motion
that's
to remove item 04-1172 to create a different action item in our packet to be voted on.
Well, that's an amendment to the agenda.
Correct.
Sure. So, yeah, I would support that.
So there's a motion to amend the agenda. We have a discussion on that? What is?
I can speak to it, but at the moment, we're just voting on whether or not we're willing to vote on it separately.
And it is amendment to the agenda, so we need a 2/3 vote to
It's a,
pass it, correct?
no, that's not correct.
No, it's a majority
It's
vote.
a majority vote.
Our
Oh,
rules.
yeah, I
It
keep
is.
getting stuck on this, don't I?
Yeah.
One of these days I'll figure it out.
So we're back to amending the agenda that was posted.
I would just say that I would be very much in favor of voting for most of the budget adjustments. It's just this one line item, so I would love to be able to show unity for the rest of the budget adjustments, except for this one line item. And that would be my reason for wanting that amendment.
So let's vote on the motion to amend the agenda.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Kyers,
No.
Mr. Barry,
No.
Mr. Bonema,
No.
Mr. Zylstra.
No.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mr. Joritsma,
No.
Mr. Bruger,
Nope.
and Mr. Teeples.
No.
The motion fails.
Okay, so we're back to the original motion to approve the budget adjustment. Allison?
So then I'm just going to speak about the line item that I have concern about. We spoke about this more at length at committee. This item's not a requirement for our health department. It's an unnecessary state and federal dollars being spent. It's fluff. We have too much of that already in government. Commissioner Cosby asked repeatedly of our health department from 2023 through 2024 to provide data showing where the needs were so that we can, as a board, make the best educated decisions on behalf of our community. And to this date, we do not have that data. And so I do not feel comfortable spending extra dollars that we do not need to spend.
Ooh, Joe?
I guess I would echo those comments, but my reason for voting no is specific. in that these are not just additional state or federal dollars that are not needed in the budget, but that these are specifically COVID, stimulus funds from the past. I think at some point, boards, governments should stop taking these dollars. I think we are well past that point. I do not support the continued use of COVID spending, and that's why I will be voting no.
I think I said this in the Finance Committee meeting, but I look at this as our tax dollars that we've paid to the federal government coming back to Ottawa County. I'd rather use them to the benefit of Ottawa County residents than to give them back to the federal government any day of the week. My understanding as well from staff is that this gives us access to up to $900,000 for qualifying activities. And if something does qualify, that means that we do not have to use our general fund budget from Ottawa County taxpayers to cover that expense. And so I will absolutely be voting in favor of this. Thanks.
Joe?
Yes, I'd like to just highlight that if it's not this board's responsibility to stop spending state or federal dollars, then that's just pushing the responsibility off to someone else, where we could make the decision to stop spending the money. And I hope that the state and federal government will also help with stopping wasting money. And I'm very glad to see that there is a little bit of movement in that area.
Me too.
Yep.
I think most of us would absolutely agree. We'd like to see governmental spending in the deficit, even though there's not one in Michigan, be lowered, no doubt about it. And Jim?
Came up in committee as well. This money is available to us. It can be used for things that are already being done. That's gives some relief to the general account. If hopefully this never comes to be, but should we be dealing with a serious situation, we've got ready assets at hand on that. But we're not going to change the federal budget by rejecting a grant like this. But if they want to cut in the future, I'm all for it. But if it's out there for right now.
Okay, can we take a vote?
I think Allison had a
Allison?
comment.
It's good. I will.
Good. Okay. Justin, can you take a vote?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barry.
Well, what's the wording on?
It's a
the vote?
motion to
Sorry.
approve, it's a motion to approve the fiscal year 2025 budget adjustments per the attached.
Yes.
Mr. Jorisma.
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra.
Yes.
Mr. Bonema.
Yes.
Mr. Moss.
No.
Mrs. Wenzel.
No.
Mr. Teeples.
Yes.
Mr. Kyers.
Yes.
Mr. Bruger.
Yes.
And Mrs. Miedema.
No.
And motion passes.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is our second public comment. And first of all, I'd like to say that I've been informed that there was indeed someone online during the first public comment that wanted to make a comment and didn't get that opportunity. And so there was, even though apparently that's how it was handled in the past, public comments online would happen at the second. Apparently, I'm being told that's in the board's discretion. So if that's the case, in the future, if people want to express their points in either one of those public comments online, I would favor that. And I apologize to the person, whoever it was, that didn't get that opportunity. And I hope that person is now going to come back and make a comment. And we apologize, but for that. Okay. So would anybody like to make a public comment? Please come forward, give your name again and where you live.
Cindy Mushrove, Spring Lake Township. I hadn't intended to speak again, but the first 2/3 of this meeting, I was very impressed with how the focus was kept on actual county business. And then Commissioner Moss had to inject his political ideology, and it went downhill from then. Claiming the Campbell plant closing was based on their ideology is ridiculous. Closing coal plants is based on climate science. You may disagree with that, but there is so much science behind that. Opposing it is based on your ideology. So if ideology is going to be used, admit that it's your ideology, you'll use it. I'm in favor of the fact that you decided to, even though I'm not in favor of coal plants, I agree with my commissioner. We need to pause this at this point because we don't know that the funding is going to be there for going towards clean energy based on the ideology in Washington right now. That's just reality. So we do what's best for our citizens. But it would be nice to keep the political ideology out of these meetings and get back to what impressed me the first 2/3. Commissioner Miedema using the term Democrat lawfare when disagreeing with her Republican board members is her political ideology and is not appropriate in this forum. That it is just ridiculous that Joe Moss thinks he speaks for the ideology of all of Ottawa County when he says that this is not the values of Ottawa County. I live here. It's not my values. And you don't hold a mandate any further in this county. So express your values, not the county's values when you speak, please. And the hypocrisy expressed by the Ottawa Impact Commissioners about how the agenda only came out 5 days in advance and they didn't have time to prepare for this. I sat through a lot of those meetings. Sometimes the agenda came out 4 p.m. the night before. I had plenty of time to go online and read the bio of the lawyer that was being recommended for this position. You guys had time too. Don't be hypocrites.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please state your name, please. Oh,
Barbara Lee Van Horsen from the City of Grand Haven and the Momentum Center. I need to address some of the statements and accusations that were made about the Momentum Center during first public comment and offer some clarification. Millage dollars support people with mental illness, addictions, and disabilities. We do charge $1 a year for membership. We don't do that to drive up membership numbers and increase statistics. There's in fact a whole process you need to go to apply to be a member. We never set up a booth and say, hey, it's only $1 to join. What we stress is participation. So we track whether people are engaged or not. And if we haven't seen you for a month, we're actively reaching out and making phone calls, trying to see what's going on, if you need help, if there's anything we can do to intervene. As I've been sitting here, I've gotten notice of 4 new members today so far. Millage money specifically cannot be used for Medicaid reimbursable services. It can't be used for therapy. So we don't do therapy because millage money won't pay for that. Instead, we offer everything else, exercise, nutrition, a positive community, and it works. People get better while requiring less costly interventions. The CMH millage ends up actually opening opportunities for CMH to serve more people, particularly moderate to severely mentally ill. If you do the math, we do get $20,000 a month. Right now, we have about 270 members. That's about $75 per member per month, less than the cost of a single therapy visit. And for that, we're offering a full slate of activities, at least 5 days a week, lots of opportunities for people to engage throughout the entire day. We're right now surveying our members because I feel we should be offering things at night and earlier in the morning, but when we do that, people haven't shown up. So we're trying to be very active and intentional about seeing what people would come to and when, so we can expand the hours we offer service. I also want to mention, a nonprofit of our size is not required to conduct a full audit, but we are required to do a financial review. Our 990 reports are available to anybody. Over the past 2 years, we have been under the financial microscope. Every dollar has been looked at from CMH and no misuse has been found. We receive CMH money to serve members of this community. I'm gonna run out of time. So, I just want you to know, we are giving people hope and purpose and meaning. We're saving lives. We refer people to therapists, and we have a bunch of therapists who refer people to us because we are where they find community and a sense of belonging.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Anyone online? Oh, here comes somebody. Can you just state your name and where you live?
I just come up here really to thank the four actual conservatives on the board who actually understand what conservatism is. Or something, or this and that, but I just say that and remind them, and I know they know this, that there are thousands, many thousands of people who back them as actual conservatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know that that's working.
Ian Zimmer, Fort Shelton Township. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. It keeps coming up. I am not sure if some of the board members are even old enough to have lived during the assassinations of Dr. King and Malcolm X. I would ask if board members have ever had to give up their seat on the bus to another as a matter of law. Have ever had to drink from a race-identified water fountain as a matter of law. Have ever endured water cannons or attack dogs. Being told you cannot vote because your grandfather did not vote. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a humanitarian issue. The lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion is relative if you have been part of the American dream or excluded from it.
Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. Rebecca Patrick, Allendale Township. Wanted to clarify somewhat probably along the lines that Ms. Van Horsen just did about around your discussion on the budget adjustment. And I've heard this before at this body, and so I think it bears a little bit of clarification, not only maybe for your sakes, but also for the sake of the public that might be listening. When you spoke about approving the grant and that would result, some of you spoke, that it would result in an expenditure, that is untrue. Grants from the state of Michigan come to this body and to the county as money that may be spent if the need is there and it can be demonstrated and it's appropriate, but it's not money that goes into some piggy bank somewhere here in Ottawa County that you can just spend willy-nilly as you please. And I think most of you know that, but I don't think all of you do, or perhaps you're willfully misrepresenting it. So when that $900,000 comes into Ottawa County that you just approved, it's not going to come into Ottawa County. It's going to be held by the state of Michigan and will be paid in arrears as invoices are submitted and inspected and verified, if ever. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon, do we have anybody online? Two people.
Yeah, we do, Mr. Chair.
1 second. Ms. Nagy is going to.
Morning. He's much
Morning.
taller than me. My name's Kim Nagy. I live in Georgetown Township. I'm concerned about some of the discussion around the Momentum Center, and I would like to clarify a few things. I was sitting next to Barbara Lee Van Horsen, who I've known for some time. I also have been to programs there. If any of you in the public or on the board have questions, Barbara has asked me to share her email since she ran out of time. Barbara@momentumcentergh.org. I also am concerned when during public comment, inaccurate information is shared. For example, that Momentum Center receives USAID funding. That is not true. So it would be very beneficial to make sure that the public is aware of misinformation when it happens at this podium. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Shannon, I think we're ready for online, folks.
Our first public comment is Karen Caprisco. And Karen, if you could just unmute yourself, state your name and jurisdiction, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. My name is Karen Capricio, so I'm a community member and business owner in Park Township. And as a side note of why I'm here today, I wanted to say that I'm encouraged by your Baker Tilly vote to see that you're ending the practice of discriminating against firms like my own, because you decide that we have views that are, quote, Marxist or, quote, focus on critical race theory. This was your approach to denying a contract with my consulting firm to work with your health department, despite that being both inaccurate and that we were highly qualified to do the work. I am really here today to speak to you about the Campbell plant, which I'm clearly too late to do, but it is not in consumers' energy's best interest to leave us in the dark. I feel confident that a for-profit business with a clear business plan for the plant's retirement understands its own business continuity requirements and grid stability risks to the community when it closes in May. I think that you are desperately trying to hold on to fossil fuel use despite overwhelming evidence that this old school approach is harming the very people and community you exist to serve. It's important to outline that by delaying the closure, you voted for having more than 73 million tons of CO2 emissions per year continuing to be pumped into the area, or the equivalent of 12.4 million passenger vehicles, to having more than 220 billion gallons of water going to waste every year, and leaving 3 million cubic yards of coal ash waste on site. I happen to have asthma, and because I also love to ride my bike, run, and swim in Lake Michigan, and enjoy all the wonderful park amenities in Ottawa County, I constantly monitor air quality to decide whether I can have outdoor time. Many people don't even realize the plant is endangering the health of families every moment it continues to operate. The closing of the plant is inevitable. The health and well-being of our communities will be greatly improved by it being closed. And Consumers has been and continues to implement a plan for replacing lost power, as well as a just transition of its workforce. When you're lying awake at night worrying about your constituents and your communities, please add to your list that you're continuing to harm their health longer than was necessary based on your vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have one additional public comment online currently. Joseph McCarter. Mr. McCarter, if you would unmute yourself, state your name and jurisdiction. You have 3 minutes.
Joseph Parnell McCarter, Georgetown Township, leader of the Save the Campbell effort. I thank the board profusely for passing the Campbell resolution, but now ask the board to be realistic about the likely response of MPSC and consumers, along with the very compressed time we have to avert closure and the inevitable plant dismantlement that quickly follows. Energy is the lifeblood of our life and economy. There are many indications MPSC and consumers are determined to press ahead with their unrealistic plan. MPSC has been undaunted by the lawsuits from many municipalities not wanting their farmlands converted into solar panel fields. We need to use all the legal levers available quickly, and here is a list of actions we recommend. 1. Ottawa County pass a resolution citing violation of the Trump National Energy Emergency Executive Order and let an AI data center locate near the Campbell and utilize its electric along with other customers, but at significantly higher rates so that the rates of customers can come down and be closer to the rates customers of municipalized electric in Ottawa County enjoy. The board should intervene regarding electric pricing in addition to service. Closing the Campbell will drive up prices that are already ridiculously high for customers in the county. Number 2, seek the assistance of the Trump administration to intervene on behalf of the Campbell, consistent with the National Energy Emergency Executive Order. We can very much use their assistance. But I want to emphasize we need a county electric plan that serves county interest, not Washington's or Lansing's. Number 3, Ottawa County Board passed a public safety ordinance prohibiting the closure of the Campbell in 2025, consistent with the Michigan Constitution. Number 4, discuss with Wolverine Power the possibility of joining Wolverine Power in litigation to to delay the closure. There's a strong legal case to be made and we should pursue it. Number 5, form an electric co-op of county townships currently without municipalized electric, or at least those that are without it which currently would like to, and begin discussing with relevant parties the possibility of a group of parties purchasing consumers' interest in the Campbell that already has minority shareholders, and this would purchase consumers' majority interest. Number 6, pursue a home rule county charter for Ottawa County for a certain trial period, which would facilitate the county's ability to prevent the county's premature closure, including the possibility of facilitating purchase of consumers' interest in the Campbell. Number 7, encourage state legislatures to amend Michigan law not to discriminate against use of coal for electric generation when accompanied with carbon capture. We need to pursue actions which do not depend upon change of mind of unelected MPSC and consumer energy executives who have a vested interest in the status quo, contrary.
Thank you. So is that how it works? That's how it works. Okay. Wow. Okay. All right. So we're at, next thing on the agenda is Gary, comments, updates, thoughts?
Thank you. Since our last board meeting, it's been a busy few weeks. We've had our first department head meeting in, I think, close to 2 years with elected officials. And we had Karen do a highlight on the budget calendar coming up, as well as Shannon Feldner, Communications Director. Her and some of her staff gave an update on the website, the software package of chatbot, which will be coming to the county here within the next couple months. And we also had an update from Scott Vanden Bosch, who does the meeting minutes. And I complimented Scott because Ron and I have been spending a little bit of time with him to see what the potential is for social media and things that he works on. And he did our 9.5-hour meeting in January. He brought it down to about 3 minutes. So I hope in the future, the board thinks about that, how quick we can condense stuff. And so there's a lot of stuff with Scott coming up. He's going to be doing podcasts. There's some of the staff that are going to be involved with that. I suspect that he's going to be asking some of the commissioners to come on those podcasts as well. Over the course of the month, we've had some meetings with some local units. I've been having conversations with them. Commissioner Barry and myself went to Park Township and met with them over some upcoming issues. We've been attending the Connect over lunch with Commissioners Eilstra and Bonema. We have one left, I understand. And then they're going to officially turn them over to Ron. And so we'll continue those on a monthly basis with staff around the county. I had the chance to represent the county at a federal hearing this past week in Grand Rapids. Several ongoing meetings with department heads that are asking for advice as they move forward, whether it comes to budget-related issues or things that they'd like to get done in the short future. The other thing that we've been working on with the use of some of Karen's staff is the RFP to select a vendor for the search for a new county administrator. We've gotten a number of applications. I believe there was 18 that actually applied. The committee narrowed it down to 4. We're going to do interviews of those 4, and hopefully by the March 11 Finance Committee, we'll be bringing one forward to recommend that we retain and move forward. The last thing Karen's still here. Karen, will you come up to the podium? I had two situations that I was involved with. One, an audit interview for the insurance authority. And that lasted about an hour and a half one day. And I didn't realize that I knew so much about the insurance authority. And but we had a good conversation. Again, the recommendation came out of that group that financially we're very well run. A lot of compliments to our finance committee and to the finance group that Karen manages. The other thing is I also was able to sit in on an interview with Moody's, which I know this board's always interested in. And again, I think to sit there for an hour and a half to 2 hours and listen to Karen explain all the dynamics of our finances in the county, the economic impact that the county has around the county, and how we're engaged with many organizations that look at economic growth and things like that. Again, I can't say enough for the expertise that she brings to the table. So Karen, thank you, and I think you have something to share in regards to Moody.
So as a result of that interview, it's Pat Sexkevich. So it's in relation to the Crockery Township bonds and the Wyoming bond system. The Moody's released a AAA relationship.
Fantastic.
So it'll save the ratepayers some money.
Nice job. Yeah, way to go, Karen.
Actually, a
That's-
lot of people, yes.
That's great news for Ottawa County. Thank you so much.
I did learn something great out of that. I went home and I told my wife that I can now manage our budget at home as long as we're dealing in millions of dollars. And so again, yeah, it's pretty amazing. I think the financial strength that the county has to move forward to and do various projects around. I did want to share too that because I know there was some discussion about it. I have had a significant amount of conversation with Chester Township, over the situation with the lake there, and I did keep them updated when we got the legal opinion. As a few of you know, I've had some issues with that, primarily since Karen handed it off to me on January 9 and said, "Here, this is yours." And and I was concerned about liability and the lack of holding the county harmless. I've been involved in negotiating contracts for the county for years in my role as sheriff, and one of the things that we were taught was, you have to protect the county, and I did just that with that contract. I had some concerns. I couldn't find anybody that really wanted to volunteer taking responsibilities to say that they reviewed that contract. And it didn't go through our normal practice. And that's one of the things I want to talk to Jack Jordan about when we sit down, that we have a process and we're going to follow it in Ottawa County. So again, I know I can't share everything, but I do want to make it very clear that I have the best interest of this county board, and so does Ron. And, that's how we're going to operate in the future as well. So,
Thank you, Gary, very much. All right, next.
Can we ask questions?
Sure.
as well?
Well,
Sure. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that. So I'm looking at the resolutions page on our website. It looks like the consumer's energy resolution was added to it today. What is what is the policy for resolutions being on that page? You get my question or no?
No,
So we have a page called resolutions.
right.
It lists 2025, the resolution to delay the closing of the Consumers Energy Campbell plant. And it has some resolutions from 2024 and 2023.
Right.
Obviously, this county didn't, begin operations in 2023. What is the policy for including resolutions on there or not having resolutions on there?
Well, I think we were asked by Commissioner about the resolutions because they had been on the former website. And so Shannon had talked to me and we decided to put them all back on. And she was just in the process of seeing that, that was done.
Okay.
We also indicated as time permits, I want her to go back. So there's other resolutions from past years that we can also post them, as you know.
Okay, so the policy will be to include how many years of resolutions there? I mean, I just don't want to get the public to have the idea that we did do resolutions before 2023 because we definitely did,
Yeah,
right?
if they can go back, 10 years, 7 years.
I don't want to add to Shannon's workflow, but I also want to be objective and say, the board has been doing resolutions for significant periods of time and not just the last 2-3 years,
But
right?
that doesn't hurt. Shannon is always looking at ways to enhance our website.
Okay,
We also talk to make them as transparent as we can,
okay,
because those resolutions will help a lot of people from even having to file FOIAs.
right,
You know,
right.
and, so,
There's a lot of times that we don't need to do a FOIA. We can just,
absolutely.
it's right there on the website.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And folks don't have to,
Yeah.
use up corporate counsel's time. Second question is, and this is more of a go back in time sort of question. Back in February 7, 2023, we had kind of tasked corporate counsel with the idea of getting a policy around online public comments. And I realized today that we accepted a resignation of corporate counsel. I guess over the next 3 months, when we still have access to Jack Jordan, whether we can finally get, an opinion around online public comments, because I do favor them.
Yeah.
I have been waiting to see that policy for, 2 years now.
Yeah.
And whether we can get that so we can discuss that.
Those are some of the things that we really want to sit down and talk to Jack
Okay.
about.
If you can just make sure that that's on the checklist as well.
And we did get a list of some of their things that they've rendered opinions
Mhm.
for since they've been on.
Right, and I don't believe the online public opinion has been one of them, so I definitely would like to see that. I think, Commissioner Bonner was on that time as well, and, Commissioner Curran is no longer here, but very much in favor of having online public comments. And the only thing that was preventing us from doing that was getting a legal opinion from corporate counsel. Before we finally see the last days of
Yeah.
Jack Jordan, I'd like to see that we can get that.
And at the point that we suggested that they, excuse me, limit their work to 24 hours.
Right, I don't want to
Then-
obviously
then-
go over that.
Then at the time, they were giving us an idea by about Thursday of the week on things they hadn't gotten accomplished.
Right,
We had gotten that for, I think.
right,
2 or
yeah,
3
this is obviously 2 years and not just a couple
and,
weeks, so.
We want to have them sit down, and that's why we said that.
Okay,
again.
yeah, I just want to make sure that before we
Jack,
finally see them walk out the door, for good. that
I'm
we can get-
convinced he'll put in 24 hours a week.
Okay, yeah, so thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is commissioner comments. Joe, you want to go first? If any?
Sure, mine's brief. Just wanted to read a quote. It's by John Stonestreet. Ideas have consequences, and bad ideas have victims. A culture untethered from truth and its divine source is a culture full of bad ideas.
Bird? Allison?
Yes, just wanted to share with the board and the community. I had an opportunity to attend an agriculture event last week at the Critter Barn called Farming Forward. One of the topics included information on transitioning your farm to the next generation and discussed quite a bit regarding succession planning. 40% of the nation's agricultural land, 370 million acres, is owned or operated currently by seniors. Ultimately, the goal of farm succession planning is to have as little disruption to the farm and family as possible in the event of an owner's incapacity or death. And for all those who know someone in the agriculture community, I just encourage you to let them know that a second Farming Forward event is set for Wednesday, March 26th at Alpine Township at Fire Station number 1 in Comstock Park. And I believe more information should be shared soon, so through the county. So just wanted to share that with my fellow board members and the community.
Thanks. Jacob?
Yeah, thank you. You know, the last couple of years, there's been some votes along the way that I've called out as being not conservative or not fiscally responsible. And inevitably, my email would light up and I would have people say, I'm a Democrat and I agree. I also want us to be fiscally responsible. This is a bipartisan thing that's going on where I think both sides want to cut wasteful spending. They want to identify what that looks like if it exists in Ottawa County. They are eager to have that conversation and identify it and act on it. So I think what's interesting today is we heard a lot about that. You know, there's a lot of bipartisan desire to really look into that. After you elected me chair of finance, I sat down with county leadership and our director of finance, and we started talking about mandated county spending versus non-mandated county spending. And we started chatting a little bit about what information is available to us about identifying programs or services that are non-mandated and compiling a list of those programs and assigning a dollar amount next to it, something along those lines to kind of get a grasp of what that looks like. And I'd like to work towards that. The reason why I'm making this comment now is I want to give you a heads up that I think this is something that we need to take on to the finance agenda and make this information available to all commissioners to see where our non-mandated spending is going and make it very easy for them to see that. That way, all commissioners can weigh in on any concerns they might have and open dialogue about whether or not these relationships, some of them have been around a long time, whether they're still necessary, whether we need to increase our relationship there because they are necessary. But basically have that conversation, you know, pause and look back and be fiscal conservatives and just fiscally responsible citizens. So I am working towards bringing that list together for you. I don't know if we'll have it for the March 11 meeting, but I think this is a direction that I would love for you guys to support the conversation and just want to start making you aware of that conversation now. Also, a bunch of us are headed to NACO, which is the National Association of Counties, and that's located in DC later this week. And this is a great, I like to call it a cross-pollinization opportunity where we get to meet with commissioners from all over the United States. And the last time that I attended, I found out that a lot of our challenges here in Ottawa County are not unique to Ottawa County. They are being solved nationwide and wrestled with nationwide. So this is a great chance for us to hopefully cherry pick some of those best ideas, bring them back to benefit our community. So I know that Commissioner Moss, I believe Commissioner Jortsma, myself, Kyers, Zylstra, and Barry. Kendra Wenzel is
I'll be there too.
Oh, you are going, okay. So we have a good representation going. So expect to hear an update from that soon.
I'm up. Going to read something. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are no longer optional initiatives, but essential components of business success. Diverse teams foster creativity and innovation, while inclusive cultures improve employee satisfaction and retention. We seem to keep coming back to this DEI question, and Joe, at some point, maybe in the next couple of weeks, you and I can sit down and have coffee. Because the quote I just read is from W Talent's website, as you know. And I just don't understand how I get condemned at an Ottawa County meeting for supporting a group called Lakeshore Advantage, which is a similar statement in theirs. And yet, you guys voted for that to hire W Talent a short while ago. So I look forward to chatting with you so I can understand that better. On another note, I have sat on the Brownfield and Economic Development Committee with the Ottawa County for about 5 years now. And one of the developments there regarding housing affordability that has been so great are changes to the Brownfield Act, which allow for housing affordability to be a qualifying criteria for a housing development to use to keep tax dollars from going to Lansing and to keep them local here in Ottawa County and apply them toward a housing need. And I was disappointed that Coopersville changed their vote on a project that was going forward. However, I am a big fan of local control, so I completely understand their decision and I accept that. On the upside, we have between, I think it's 2 or 3 additional housing projects coming through the Brownfield Committee right now. Or cities in Spring Lake, and I know Hudsonville, are very proactive in addressing housing needs in Ottawa County, and I am just grateful to them for doing so. And if you are a developer who has a heart for housing, and by that I mean housing that is more affordable, please come and talk to Becky Huttinga with Ottawa County and look at accessing some of the funds that are available for that need in our community. We have a current shortage of about 10,000 housing units in Ottawa County. And this is having a huge impact, in particular in my city of Grand Haven, on our public schools, where our school enrollment numbers are dwindling. Same thing's happening in Spring Lake because it is so expensive to live here for new young families. So yeah, please keep it going. Thanks.
Kendra, any comments?
I was going to talk about the same thing Jacob did, NACO. I am looking forward to that. We were able to go last year, and then I overheard Jim talking about some fun things that are going to be happening, and I'm just looking forward to reporting on that when we get back.
Go ahead, Jim?
Looking forward to the conference end of this week.
Doug?
Yeah, no, we had a good discussion, I think, with Commissioner Moss about, viewpoint discrimination, what that means, and, whether it resides here in Ottawa County, whether we're looking for our vendors. I just wanted to clarify that, Human Resources had a recommended statement for departments. I just want to read it real quick. Ottawa County Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Value Statement. Ottawa County recognizes the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion in the accomplishment of our mission and holds as a basic value to proactively engage and understand a variety of perspectives across all human difference. We seek to ensure respectful, fair treatment, and full equal access to opportunities and resources so all may thrive and achieve their full potentials. We believe every person's voice adds value. Then it was finished by this line: applicants whose work can align with this value are encouraged to apply. I just want to make sure that folks know that, candidates were never asked to agree with that statement necessarily to be employed here. Again, going back to the discussion of, if you view, the world in a certain way, should you be prohibited from getting a contract with us? Or if you view this world in a certain way, should you be prohibited from being employed here? I just want to clarify that our statement back then in no way asked employees to agree with that statement in order to be employed here.
Bill?
Yeah, I look forward to NACO. I've sat on agriculture and rules on NACO for a long time, and I look forward to sitting back on there again. I signed up for that right away. I've brought really good stuff back to Michigan from the National Association of Counties as far as our legislators and lobbyists go there, and it helps save a lot of money as far as agriculture in Michigan. And I'm kind of proud of that thing, and I get involved like that really helps the national lobbyists. So I look forward to that. And also stakeholders, Campbell is still getting us involved. We got a meeting the 27th, so look forward to communicating and talking to them again at the Campbell plant. Are you involved with that, Jim? So yeah, I think it's mostly the ones that are involved with school taxes that they invite there. So part of it will be parks. I mean, there's a lot of natural resources out there that we'll be keeping in mind, and they look forward, and they've really been good with talking to us about how we can work forward with that. So we'll keep you in touch on that. So thanks.
The only comment I would make is thank you again, all the commissioners and the community. We're working, we're working on behalf of the county, and we appreciate the comments online, publicly, everything else. That's how we grow together. So thank you again. And I guess with that, the meeting's over.